There we go. Sorry to interrupt. I always like to time it right with the end of the video because it makes it easier for me to edit afterwards. Hey, good evening, everyone, and welcome to episode 7 of the Armchair I think 7. That's what I wrote. Hopefully that's right. Of the Armchair Admirals and Generals podcast. I apologize if you can hear my kids screeching in the background.
I should have given you like a box of crayons that you could like eat one crayon every time we had an episode, and thereby you could just figure out what episode we were on by the number of crayons in the box.
Yeah, it just count backwards from 16 or 8. And
that assumes you
I shouldn't have made it that complicated. You're right. I don't know what I was thinking.
What'd you say, Sarah?
I said that assumes you can count.
I'm only one beer in, so still for a little bit longer. Yeah. But yeah, welcome to the Armchair Admirals and Generals podcast, episode 7. We're calling this one the right tool for the job. This evening, I have perennial co-host Nightcob with me. Nightcob, say hi. And then
hi. New
face, Sgt Tickles, who you might know if you're watching live or watching later on YouTube. So if you may have seen my tweets a while back, just bringing in some additional faces and personalities to the Armchair Admirals and Generals repertoire for a multitude of reasons, just for scheduling purposes, but also to bring different backgrounds, people from different branches of the military, and just to get a little bit more variety. Also, just schedule depending, because it's oftentimes very difficult to line up schedules. So everybody say welcome to Sgt Tickles. Sgt Tickles, why don't you tell us about your gaming background and what your military background is?
Well, gaming background, it's been 84 years. Gosh, how far back do we go? Started on NES, but if we want to skip ahead, did a lot of MMOs for a while. Kind of got tired of them. Got tired of WoW and all the WoW remakes. Really got into Star Citizen when it was started being playable. Love the Diablo franchise. Gosh, a lot of games. Fun stuff. Really like SC. Kind of taking a little break from it for a little bit, but it's
say we all.
Still in the, yes, it's still in the inventory. I got burnout streaming it like for 3.5 years straight, 5 nights a week. So,
oh geez, that is very prolific.
Yeah,
wow,
yeah.
Good on you.
Yeah, it's like I said, I got burnout. But I'm giving it time to mature a little bit, and we'll come back and check it out here in 320 when the Hull C comes out.
Yeah, that is definitely a healthy mentality, especially if you're, because I find that if I play any one thing for too often or too long, I'll get burnt out on just playing video games, period. Not just that one game. And so, I try to mix it up a lot just to have some variety. It's kind of like, eating the same thing for dinner every night, 5 days a week. It would get real fast.
And with my ADHD, I'll hyper fixate the shit out of a game for like a solid 2-3 weeks and then not touch it for like 8 months. So, so that's a little bit of gaming stuff.
Stream this screen to you guys. Are you guys both watching the stream? Do you need me to send this screen to you guys in Discord? I was free to do that.
I don't think so.
I'm good. I got the stream up.
Oh, and I forgot to change the stream information. Whoops.
Yeah, you did, man. See, you were acting all pro. You're acting all pro until
I was cooking dinner and then eating dinner and.
Sorry, man.
I'll give you a pass this time.
Yeah, I get it right like once every 5 podcasts. And it's like, ooh, God, my grades. While I'm changing this... Nightcob, why don't you tell us about yourself and your background? And then I forgot to ask you before we got started, are you allowed to talk about your movements, what you were telling Atira and I? Or is that's not anything...
classified? No, man, I can tell people if I get orders to things.
Okay, well, yeah,
I'm good there. Yeah.
You're our mermaid. You live under the sea, so we gotta make sure we're all.
That's why I'm so pale.
Good to go with that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. So I'm Night Cobb. I'm a active duty, full-time submariner. Really very, 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 especially lately, part-time streamer. And every once in a while I put out a really cringy YouTube video. Don't check those out. I'm serious. They're not good. But been in the military for a while now. Submarines the entire time, and served on fast attacks. Served on guided missile submarines, and I've done a few shore duties in between. And I was currently doing shore duty, and I'm deciding to curtail that and actually go back to sea duty early to go do the next big thing, take over a department chief position on board a submarine. So going to go back and do that actually later this year. So this the shore duty stuff, I decided it was for the birds. And ready to
even
get back
when you're
underway.
in Greece on vacation.
That wasn't vacation. That was a workation. Mm-hmm. God, like we're on stream, man. Some of my work colleagues watch this.
Yeah,
I'm gonna have to explain that later. They actually know the truth. I don't worry about it. They knew what I was doing. Yeah, no, I know. Yeah, there's real suffering. There's real suffering on shore duty when I have to travel and end up in Greece for like 2.5 weeks.
Oh yeah, the pictures were torture. You were just straight up,
man.
Yeah, it was
Jack Ryan.
It was tourism season too. I don't know what to say.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That must suck, man. I always got TD-wide friggin' deserts.
Yeah.
Don't be wrong. Don't be wrong. I've spent time in Bahrain. I've spent time in the Gulf of Oman. I've spent time, Djibouti and all that kind of stuff. I haven't had it all great places. Every once in a while, I'm a big fan of karma in the military. Every once in a while, I get a call back, and life is good. So
for those who don't know where Djibouti is, it's right above Jalegzi's.
That's a good joke. I'm gonna steal that if you don't mind. That's a good one.
Yoink.
But yeah.
Well, and being at sea for long periods of time is definitely it's not a pleasure cruise, especially I can imagine cramped quarters of a sub, deep underwater. I
don't like water, so hard pass. If I can't stand in it, I'm no thank you.
That's my world. I'm like, you say that's like the not fun part. That's my favorite part. But I'm broken.
My least favorite times in the bird was all over water. 100%.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that is definitely one of those things that will make you uneasy if you're a long time over water in a Black Hawk. Yeah.
Yeah, and especially at night, doing deck landings on little tiny ships. Mm-hmm. I'm looking at I'm like, are we gonna fit on that?
Yeah. Literally one of the most dangerous things you can do in a helicopter is landing on the
part of the crew.
Follows. Here they come.
Part of the crew, part of the ship. Part of the crew, part of the ship. Part of the crew, part of the ship.
Let that play through. Sgt Tickles, I apologize. We talked about your game background, and you didn't even get to talk about your military background. Please, if especially because there might be people watching now and watching later who aren't aware of who you are. Make sure let's let everybody know what you do, and then plug your channels as well, because I know you're on Kick now too.
Yes, I am over on Kick. I haven't quite completely abandoned Twitch, but it's kind of fun being in the grind again, trying to do the follower grind, trying to get affiliate and stuff. But yeah, military background. I was a aerial gunner on Air Force helicopters, so HH-60 Golf models. 2 deployments to sunny Afghanistan, and free PTSD. So that's always fun.
Mm-hmm. All inclusive PTSD package.
All inclusive.
Yeah.
All inclusive.
So Sgt Tickles was recommended to me by multiple people who are active in my community. When I put out what I did is I reached out to everybody in my Discord. Is like, hey, I want to add some more military members of the Star Citizen community, content creators, or just people who are really active, and I just asked for requests. And so Sgt Tickles got recommended to me. Solus, who heads up the Beyond the Verse podcast, got recommended, and Drinkers with Gaping Problems, and what's his other name that he uses? I always brain farted. but he's former Royal UK Navy. So we're going to be trying to get them on as well. The reason I wanted to bring these two guys on for this podcast is we're going to be talking, if you've been watching Pathfinders, we've been talking a lot about engineering, gameplay, resource management components. So I've been doing a lot of homework on that, and it's a lot of really interesting stuff. And it's one of those things that CIG has been working a lot on the last couple years. A lot of that work has been behind the scenes. We have a recent ISC on engineering gameplay. They talked about resource management at last CitizenCon. It's been mentioned in the letters from the chairman. They're really pushing hard to try and get it out to us and get us playing with it, and just tons of information coming out about it. Its development in the monthly reports. So it's something I'm very interested in. I'd love to play the whole Scotty thing, but also it's going to add a whole lot of depth to our gameplay and our ships. And we've got a engineer on a nuclear submarine, and then I can't speak for the Air Force, but I know, my job now, if you're not aware of who I am, I'm a former Infantry Marine, and so that's where the 0311 comes from, 0311. But now I'm Army National Guard, and I'm a flight paramedic on Blackhawks. So Sgt Tickles and I have both rode the shutter on the same aircraft, but different. And that's part of what we're going to be talking about, because the HH-60 that the Air Force uses, even though it looks very similar, it has different performance characteristics, different capabilities than the UH-60 or even HH-60 that I fly on in the Army. And so that's part of what we're going to be talking about with the components, in that you can take your stock whatever ship, and that's part of resource management and all the components and subcomponents, and you can take that and it will still look the same on the outside, but you can change the performance and a lot of the characteristics about it a lot with the components and subcomponents and tuning via resource management. And so that's what we're gonna be talking about this evening. But before I get started, you've probably seen the announcements in chat if you're watching live right now, or if you're watching later on YouTube, and this is your first time hanging out, you might not be aware of it. You also see the little GIF in I guess it's the bottom right corner. Everything I do on my content, whether it's on YouTube or on Twitch, all monetization goes to stackup.org. I take no money for myself. I do well enough with my civilian job, and like Sgt Tickles was talking about, free all exclusive pass to PTSD land. That's what stackup.org is all about. Connecting veterans and military members with gaming and gaming communities to help combat PTSD and the struggles of deployments, being away from your support group. So it's something that I really believe in. It's something these guys believe in, and the other members of the Armchair Admirals and the Generals crew. So just by being here,
ironically, I'm wearing the shirt.
Oh, is that a Call to Arms
Nice.
shirt?
Yeah.
Nice. Is that this year's or last year's?
21s.
Oh man, awesome. That's good stuff. Sweet. We have another participant in stackup.org. Call to Arms is their sort of annual fundraising drive, I guess you'd call it. And so I'm well on my way. Don't look at the thing at the top. It's actually wildly inaccurate. But I'm well on my way to my $1,000 goal this year, and we're hoping to eclipse that and really help out some veterans, some military member, get them connected with video games and other people playing them, and be able to have conversations like this and have a good time, have a beer, and not dwell on things. So that's what we're all about.
Yeah.
So I just want to say thank you to everybody who's watching live or watching later. Just by dealing with an ad, you're helping the cause. And if you do choose to donate, you can use the link that's in chat, or you can click the little thing on the Twitch. It's just to the left of the chat. And if you really hate ads on YouTube or on Twitch, you can give me send a sub my way, and I take 100% of that money and send it over to stackup.org. I don't keep a cent for myself. So, but yeah, this evening, so I, for these episodes, what I do is we come up with a topic, we come up with some resources to go with that, from CIG, information that they've put out, and then we just come up with some questions to surround those topics to sort of guide the conversation. And so we've been talking about this sort of stuff, and so we're going to start off this episode talking about the resource management side, as long as it's not private tickles. Yeah.
Hey, before we get into it, I gotta ask.
That's off camera.
I gotta ask. How did you come up with the handle? Like, what's the story behind the handle?
It's nothing great, man. Honestly, it was my first WoW character's name in like 2006. I just wanted to think. I was like, just wanted a funny name. It was long before I was in the military.
Okay.
And yeah, I just thought that sounded goofy. So that's been my handle on everything ever since.
That's awesome. Okay. I had to ask.
It had nothing to do with the military in any way, shape, or form.
When Tree first briefed me on he's like, yeah, we're going to bring on this guy, Sgt Tickles. He's a former vet. I was like, man, with a name like Sgt Tickles, I like him already. Can't wait.
Oh, and before I continue, just because sometimes people always ask, what are you drinking? I always, for a stream or a podcast, I try to drink a space-themed beer, and this is Cosmic Creatures IPA from Deschutes Brewery in Oregon. I actually found it while I was camping in Oregon. Was that last week or the week before with my family? And it's quite good. And it's got a flying saucer abducting a mountain biker on it. So cool. So yeah, we're going to be talking we're going to be talking about resource management. God, I hate why can't Google have everything with the dark mode? I just pulled up the notes page and it's just absolutely glaring.
Oh, man. Yeah, I wish the same thing for Google Workspaces. That's
So if you're following along in chat, I'll put the links in chat here in a second, just so you can see what sort of things we're talking about. You've probably seen them, maybe you haven't, but just so you can be aware. And these links, I'll put them in the description in the show notes if you're watching on YouTube later. But yeah, talking about resource management, we've got an old engineering document from like 2017 that just talks about all the components and their grades, their classifications. There's even an image that shows all the work in progress of all the subcomponents and how they're broken up into groups and subgroups. And then more recently, we've got Inside Star Citizen from fall 2020, which is where we saw that Aegis Hammerhead model with the all the resource management stuff with the relays and the power supply, fuel tank, etc.
Is that old?
Yeah, 2020. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. But then 2 years later,
it's only a few
about
years.
the same time. Yeah. 2 years later, same time, Power Play, Journey to 4.0, CitizenCon 2952, and then this spring, Design Brief Engineer, Journey to 4.0, Thursday ISC thing. So those are the sort of rough resources. There's more information if you want to check out the Pathfinders podcast where we go in depth into this stuff. But that's basically what we're going to be, kind of referring back to, as well as just our in-game experiences. So first question of the evening, we're going to start off with Sgt Tickles, and this is sort of off the cuff and sort of.
Let's start with Tickles.
We're going to put them on the spot.
Let's go.
Yeah, we're several minutes in, so now we can say, fucking send it, man. So what are your general thoughts in regards to ships and particularly the ships that you like to use about what CIG has told us about the resource management system?
I tell you what I'm most looking forward to with it, 100%, is just more multiplayer gameplay. Relying on someone else in your ship and knowing that you want to fly with people who know what they're doing and not just have your buddy who's a shithead in the back who's not going to help you out if you got a subcomponent that needs changing or something mid-flight, mid-battle. I've been looking forward to multiplayer gameplay in Star Citizen forever, in more than just like, hey, let's go raid this bunker together, but really having engineering gameplay and all the resource management just means what I've been waiting for is coming to fruition. So it's more of an overall than a individual thing.
No, that's a good answer, because we've had turrets and that's about it for how long now? And even as long as you've got more than a one person ship, there's going to be room for doing that sort of stuff and optimizing. And that's one thing that they've emphasized in the videos here, that this is really what this is meant for, and it's going to really open up the doors for a lot of that sort of stuff. And it's not mandatory. It's not one of these things where, oh, well, if you don't have somebody doing engineering on your ship, you're up a creek without a paddle. But it's just going to allow for a lot of that, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun. And damn gnats.
There was like one small patch for a very short time that like the co-pilot could actually move like a shield slider around or stuff like that. And that was about it. That was it for multiplayer gameplay as far as two people in the ship at the same time doing something other than manning a turret.
Yeah.
So,
and even if we had the power triangle, that's those things working on a regular basis,
help.
That'd be better than nothing. But it's as far, from my experience, it's been very hit or miss whether it works from patch to patch and whether it works from ship to ship. Certain things I'm good at multitasking. It's certain things I'm not. If you want me to try and do my own power management in my ship, oh gosh, and moving my shields around or anything, it's going to go badly for me. And I fly with sticks now, and I have all I would have to do is move the little hat thing around, and I would still forget to do it. So,
what sticks you got?
Oh, I just have the T16,000s. They're just decent introductory sticks. Nothing fancy. Allows me to get used to it, flying that way. But I just get, when you're flying and you have, you have other ships around you, or you're near asteroids or a station, or for me, like I fly in Atmo a lot, because I'm a wannabe dropship pilot. There's terrain, caution, terrain, caution, terrain.
Don't get me started. I want to rat out so bad.
Yeah, I hear that in my head when I'm getting too close to the ground because I can't help it.
When you crash, retard.
Yeah.
Retard. Yeah. That's an aviation joke. Don't.
Yeah.
I do a lot of DCS.
But you get fixated on what's in front of you, what's around you, looking around. And so it's really hard to remember to look down at your MFDs, which are, even with Toby, being able to easily look down at my MFDs, you forget about it, and because
Here's a system I'd like. Your average minivan nowadays has friggin' like a 4K reverse camera. Give me an undershot camera. Give me a landing camera.
Well,
I'd gladly take one of my MFD slots where I can see where the hell I'm landing.
Yeah, I have. If
every time you drop the landing gear, it just automatically shifted an MFD to the underside camera. Yeah,
that's a programmable keybind that I have on my sticks, but it's for rear view, so I can see that I'm getting shot on my ass. Yes, I'm aware. I don't need the camera to see that. How come there isn't a dedicated camera angle? Yeah, that you could plug to your keybind on your sticks. Why do I need a rear view camera it blinks at me when I'm getting shot on the ass. I don't need to look back there.
Yeah.
They're not in front of me, so they must be back there. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, no, good stuff. Night Cobb, same question. What are your general thoughts in regards to ships about what CIG has told us about resource management? Oh, night vision.
Okay. First, I got a question for the sergeant over there. What you drinking?
Oh, yeah.
Well, I'm starting off with a wheat beer from a local brewery. Probably can't see the can. It's green.
That's actually really cool.
And then, no, it's not it's a wheat blonde. So
nice.
And then later on, I'll be switching
over
blondes. To woodchuck.
I like beer too, but I mean, that's
cheers, clink.
I'm more of a brunette guy, but yeah, I like blondes in my beer.
Fair. All right, and then all right. Now we got that out of the way. I was curious. I saw the can a couple times, and I was like, I want to know what he's drinking.
I only had one left.
Yeah, sorry. I'm drinking water tonight. I would normally be drinking a beer with you guys, but like I said, I had too much in Greece. I was drinking a bunch of Lyra over there.
I don't know what the hell that is.
It's a local Cretan beer from the island of Crete. Anyway.
Cretan, as in people from Crete, not like, little Cretans.
Little Cretans.
Yeah, you little cretins. Yeah.
Tiny people's beer.
No.
They're just 6-ounce cans.
Little goblins.
Yeah, goblin beer. That's what I was drinking. All right, my feelings on resource management. Well, I hate to say it, but I mean, Sgt Tickles really stole a lot of my thunder there, because he basically described, the ideal multi-crew experience, and what I live with on the submarine. It's all about training people to be exactly what you need them to be in the right moment, especially in casualties. When the shit is hitting the fan, and like teamwork saves the day. A good casualty drill response on the sub is like a triple play in baseball to me, where you fully recovered the ship and you're back in the fight. And, I look forward to that as part of that gameplay. And I really want to, I think what excites me the most about resource management and the depth that they're going is the idea that you can be an expert engineer, and maybe not even just an expert engineer of all ships, but maybe you're master of a few, so that you're marketable for multi-crew. The idea is that it's like, you start putting yourself out there like, look, guys, I'm really good at maintaining hammerheads, Perseus. Like if it's RSI and it's a sub-capital or something to that effect, like I'm your guy. Like that's my expert system and stuff like that. And then people start fighting over that. Like, well, I want you to engineer for my ship. Look, guys, I only got so much time. It's going to require a contract. I require X amount of AUEC per hour while I'm serving on board your ship. And, you're paying me that and I'm worth the money. And I love that idea for like engineering style gameplay, where they've got that mastery and therefore you can count on them.
Right, and I think that kind of ties in with their like rating systems where you can rate people.
Ooh,
if you got a bunch of good ratings and people leave notes about I don't know how it's going to work in the long run, right? But people leave notes about, hey, he did this for me, and like bullet point, basically EPR style or whatever.
Space Angie's List, yeah.
No,
Part of the crew, part of the ship.
Yeah, that'd be. I think those would
Part of the crew, part
really go well together
with
with what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, hopefully that's so the reputation system is thankfully under the purview of the mission feature team now. And they've been going gangbusters with the new modular mission system. So hopefully coinciding with that, they're also getting some work done on that. So that way we can have a little bit more interaction. I don't think we're going to see resource management in game until, maybe a tidbit or end of the year, but probably most likely first half of next year. I think it's going to be a big theme for next year will be resource management coming in game, just because they've got so much more on their plate. But I hope that will give the mission feature team time to get the reputation system up to speed, so that way we do have the ability to rate people, and that way we can look up people based off of their because if you're doing those, eventually there are going to be jobs where somebody performs a job, does a function, and then they can get rated for that based off how well they perform it. Whether it's just doing engineering style jobs in game, and you're like, oh yeah, I've got this. I've got just like how they have for bounty hunting now. You're you go. I always forget how the HRTs and all the ranking system works, but you do those to get a certain ranking level of bounty hunter within North Rock or whoever else to get those missions. Well, you'll have that for doing maintenance things, and you're like, oh, okay, you can see that this person has put in the time and effort to do all these maintenance missions and get all this practice, and then hopefully we'll be able to hire them and then have reputation with somebody and be like, oh, okay, that person is a reputable person, and they rated them as a 5-star engineer. They've got 30 5-star engineering ratings or something like that. Who knows how they'll make it work, but I think that'd be really great to be able to advertise that.
Yeah, and they're going to have to think about how they do it too. You're only going to be able to rate someone that you hired for a particular job, or is anyone going to be able to rate anyone at any time? Because I see that going both ways, good and bad. be able to buy ratings, right, as it were, and or a large org doesn't like somebody or something, or like a rival org, so they get all of their members to downrate all of their members. You know, it's like it's got to be a rating system you're able to trust, not just random.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's gonna be a lot of edge cases. I don't envy them that, but it is definitely something that we need, because obviously you can't have the only way you're earning reputation is with NPC orgs, you know, and you know that's a vital part of your resume as an engineer, you know, or doing this sort of gameplay is being able to, you know, not only talk the talk, but you know, walk the walk and have, you know, somebody else, you know, back you up on it.
Mm-hmm.
Good answers. No, good stuff. I like that. We will, let's see, second question. We'll start off with Nightcop because you got second on the first one. Given your experience surrounding real life ship systems, what would you do anything different when it comes to resource management, or what else would you like to see in terms of you know, our interactions with the systems? Not necessarily you know, the gamification of it with engineering gameplay, but you know, what system, how they're building out the resource system.
I think my big thing, and I think this is lost. I know you put the links in there and stuff like that. One of the key things is that video from, I think that was 2020. That was the oldest video, or was that 2017? No, it was 2020.
Oh, the first one with the hammerhead?
Yeah.
Yeah,
where they basically started that up. One of the key parts of that presentation is the idea of fuel equals power. And, you know, everybody kind of focuses on the power plant. And it's so, the thing I think about it right now is, right, hydrogen fuel right now is pretty much just determined by your thrusters and almost seemingly only affected by your boost, is what you get, you know, to start sucking down hydrogen fuel. What I want to see is the meaningful, you know, side effect of, okay, what happens when all of the other things start sucking off that same power plant, like your lights, you know, your weapons, you know, when you refill the capacitor bank on, you know, your size 4 repeaters, you know, that energy's got to come from somewhere. You know, capacitors require a source power to fill up the capacitor, and then when you drain the capacitor, source power refills it again. That's all got to cost fuel. And, you know, I think that's going to, and throw that in with efficiency, and that takes that system to a whole new level. So it looks like they've thought about that. At least they did 3 years ago. And, you know, they talked about the resource management gameplay, and I think that's where they're headed first, is that idea of, you know, fuel for power consumption for all things. You know, by laying the pipe work of, hey, your laser capacitors are connected to your power plant on this ship, because you don't need anything physical necessarily. But I think they do want physical things where you can sever those connections. That's a whole, I think that's part of that whole Maelstrom system, you know, where it's physicalized damage. So right now, I think we get the gamified, you know, just, you know, draws off your power plant one way or the other. And thereby, and your power plant draws off your fuel tank. Because that's, you know, related to what I do, you know, the submarine, right? We have the nuclear reactor, and ultimately everything that we do off that, because it's self-contained, right, costs fuel. It just costs fuel in the form of, you know, enriched uranium, but there's a finite amount of it, and going fast, using a lot of power for propulsion while at the same time using power for electricity, and every load on the electrical distribution system that eats fuel slowly, granted, you know, with the nature of nuclear power, you know, but still, it's something that has to be managed. It's something that has to be accounted for. It's something that you have to have in the back of your mind, because I think when you bring in that power distribution, and okay, you know, you start making decisions not just based on, you know, I just need military grade A components. Well, what if military grade A components are inefficient and a resource hog in the name of performance? You know, maybe your shields recharge faster, but maybe they're not efficiently doing that, and they're eating your fuel. You know, then you start making a lot more variable-based decisions, and I think that's the biggest part about resource management that I think is going to add to the game, is it's going to add the decision points to components, I hope. And how we make those decisions, what those variables are for those decisions. And I want that for meaningful gameplay and ship outfitting more than most things for resource management.
Well,
Yeah,
let's,
I rambled for a
I
minute.
almost hope
Sorry.
that it does do that, because then it would make the whole air-to-air refueling system useful. Right now,
Yeah.
there's zero purpose to have a refueler, because it's so much quicker just to bop down to a landing pad on a moon or a planet, refuel, and go along your merry way. Now this is Stanton where it's populated. Pyro could be a different game, right? But
Yeah, and
that's
the thing about quantum fuel for the most part. My curiosity is the hydrogen fuel game. Quantum's kind of like set in stone, right? Because it's essentially a separate fuel source, unless they intend to tie it into like the power plant. So you're really looking at that already as like do I have enough fuel for the distance while I'm jumping? And I think Pyro is going to win in that category. But I'm with you. Just to be clear, what I'm hoping for is it starts making meaningful choices about the hydrogen fuel. Assuming they keep
100%.
that as like, yeah.
I agree with you, because I'm just thinking of like how the helicopter worked. It's just everything's drawn off JP8 or whatever jet fuel you're using. The main engines are burning it and producing physical power to via the shafts, and then that spins everything else. Spins your hydraulics, that spins your generators, that spins obviously the big rotating thing up top. Yeah, I don't want to be too technical here, AKA the rotor head. But yeah, I mean, it literally everything is from the engines burning fuel. So that does matter when you're engineering stuff and how much stuff you add to it, right? Because if you have other systems that are requiring hydraulic power that's putting a higher strain on your hydraulic generators, or the things that pump the fluid, I guess it'd be pumps. Sorry, I wasn't an engineer. I made things go boom.
No, you got it. You nailed it.
But yeah, that puts more strain there, which makes your engines either A, have to work harder, or which obviously takes more fuel, or B, you sacrifice the efficiency of your hydraulics. So I like the idea that maybe military grade A components might suck fuel faster, but they're a lot better. And if fuel's not a problem for you, if you're just going to go do a mission and then refuel, it's not a big deal. But if you plan on being out and about for a while, you might think, well, maybe I want some whatever, the economy class that's going to last a while, but you're not needing the performance. Yep. So I like the idea if they're going that route.
Yeah. Well, you showed the design documents and stuff like that. You got them in the links. If you guys haven't looked at them, I highly recommend it. Because I was unaware of the subcomponent design document that you showed off there.
Well, so what they did is they when that document, the engineering document came out, they had literally just done a sprint, an art sprint on making the subcomponents. So they've physically made them, and they have the subcomponents have serialized variables. They're ready to go. They just don't have the gameplay yet, because obviously they thought back then that, this will be in soon. So we should probably have no, but
sorry,
they got started on making these subcomponents for different manufacturers and different types, and so they have thought about it. They've done some of the work. They've made all those, and they've also made them with a spent or damaged state. Like, hey, you used it up. It's no good anymore. You need to replace it. So it was pretty cool when I was doing the research for Pathfinders, that Pathfinders episode on that. But it was, A, yeah, they look cool, but B, more importantly, these are just what they said in like around the verse episode back then, is these are some of the what did I call them? Groups and subgroups for the modifiers that they're working on. And it's like, well, there's 3 subgroups, and then there's like 4 or 5, or 3 groups, and then 4 or 5 subgroups with multiple manufacturers for each one. It's like, that's a lot of variety just for,
I think they'll dial that down though.
Oh yeah, they'll refine it and everything. It's just, it's interesting that this is what they're thinking about, and we already have a good amount of variety with components. So there's the and we're going to get more into that. But what what both of you guys were just saying about fuel consumption and about, how these things work in real life, and there's obviously a good deal of influence on, or parallelism from real life to what CIG is doing and how this works. It's gamified and it's simplified, but it makes sense. If you know how a car works, you're like, oh, okay, this makes sense. If you know how an aircraft flies and how they're powered, or for you, a nuclear reactor and everything that goes with, there is a logical flow to it that a lot of people might not have thought about. And like what both of your guys' answers, that's like, yes, that is exactly what I wanted to hear for this episode. That's why I wanted to bring you guys on, because people don't think about this stuff ahead of time. They might not be aware of the resource management system and how these things are going to work, and they might not relate it back to these sorts of things. And you don't think about that in your car all that much, unless you're like, I went on my road trip to Oregon 2 weeks ago for camping. And I was thinking, you're watching your fuel consumption, because you got a long drive and you're like, I don't want to be, flying down the I'm not in a hurry. I don't want to be flying down the highway at 90 miles an hour. Yeah.
You literally are burning your money.
Yeah,
literally.
You're burning money. Mm-hmm.
You're catching your money on fire so that you can move.
Yeah. And
that's wild.
If you don't drive much, if you just drive a little bit around town, you probably don't think about it all that much. But, if that's your job, if that's been, your profession, if these things, your concerns are very relevant to, to a certain point, even your survival, it makes a big difference where you place a priority on it. And, we're going to have to make those decisions in game, of whether you survive that encounter, whether you get stranded out in the middle of nowhere and have to call for help, whether you burn through a component far faster than you had planned, and now you're limping along, or you have to replace it, and it's going to cost you a boatload of money because you bought the expensive, grade A military this or that. So yeah, those are really good points. Good stuff.
And another thing that they really need to think about with balancing this is realism versus fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that's the whole thing with Star Citizen as well. I personally would like a little bit more realistic startup sequence instead of just getting in and pressing Y and peacing out. However, I get that not everyone might want that experience. So getting in, pressing Y and peacing out should be an option, but it should also be, I don't know if there's some reward for it, or something. Like, I don't know, like if you go through the startup sequence, your ship's 5% more efficient. I don't know. Right. But
maybe it's just a matter of saving a little bit of fuel at the startup.
Yeah,
I mean, that would do it for me. Or if you do a manual startup, maybe it's not just fuel, but you have the chance to save on some wear and tear on your components. So maybe you got less, a smaller percentage of malfunction.
Yeah, I like the idea of that too. Something along the lines to make it worthwhile going through. And I'm not saying like a 30 fucking step checklist, but maybe
you're not looking for DCS
7 or something.
Man,
I'm not looking for DCS, but somewhere in between DCS and getting in and pressing Y and fucking off. Like somewhere in between. Also, I'd like, and then this comes from aviation background. I know I'm getting a little bit off topic, but
very good.
I would love a little bit more realistic ATC instead of pressing one button again or calling in, and it's just a canned thing. Calling in I'd love to be able to call for a specific landing pad. You know what I mean? I'd love to be able to, I don't know, something. Again, something more than one button, less than, again, DCS.
So Aether Drift asks in chat, don't they already do something like that with Flight Ready? You enter every system in. So you can turn on your engine, the various systems. I think what we're talking about is more your startup sequence to get your different systems going. Like your
turn on on all your systems, turn on your shields, turn on your, in the right order to, for less fuel consumption or whatever it ends up being. Your
fuel pump, those sorts of, it doesn't need to, and Sgt Tickles and I are probably have used the very same startup checklist for Blackhawks. And I'm sure that there is a insane checklist for starting up a nuclear reactor or something. And it doesn't need to be complicated, but just having a short sequence of events to get these systems going in order to, I do this, and this over 10, 15 seconds to start up my power plant. Once that's going, then I do this, and this to start up my coolers and get, the coolant flowing. And then this, and this to get, power routing. It takes you 1, maybe 2 minutes if you're good at it.
Because
and it gets you a little benefit.
There is already like 3 with things you could turn on, but that's 3. Engines, shields, okay. And you
press button, it comes on.
Off in 10 seconds. You're turning on a spaceship, for Christ's sake.
Yeah.
We're not getting in our fucking Cessna, which even has a longer startup, but still.
Yeah. And whether it's efficiency or I was going to say whether it's something efficiency wise as far as fuel consumption, or if you do it this way, you're not, I like the if you're going through the startup process, it's not a hard cold start. It's a soft cold start. It's
maybe your components
wear and tear.
Don't wear out as fast or something.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think quick head thought. You brought up a point. You can actually go to the power menu and select power to the individual components of your ship, to like the coolers, to all those things. So it's not even just like, hey, power to engines, power to weapons, power to shields, and you're good. You can actually literally do your own startup sequence. And then you're talking about what, 8, 10 things? But it would make sense.
A terrible way to do it because you got to zoom in on that little ass menu, scroll in and out, and then that's zooming you in and out. It's not like it's an enjoyable sequence.
Don't get me wrong, UI notwithstanding, what I think would make sense though is kind of like what Tree talking about. Like in my head, related to my job, first thing I'd want is coolers, and I'd probably start those on the battery because power without a heat sink is not good. And what happens is, and I think what would make sense immediately for a consequence is, power plant without a heat sink, that's going to put some wear and tear in the form of heat damage on that component. And then, so then it's like, all right, so coolers, all right, now that coolers are on, power plant on. Okay, now that the power plant's up, I can come off the battery. And that's kind of like what you guys deal with too in the aircraft business, right? It's all about, all right, battery, APU start. After the APU start, okay, now it's time to, turn on one of the engines. The rotor starts to spin, stuff like that. You light that one engine off. One of the generators comes online. Technically, you don't need, well, I don't know. It depends on the aircraft. Sometimes you need both engines before you turn off APU power in the battery. But you get the idea, right? You're at that point now, that engine's up and it's spinning hydraulics and all that kind of stuff.
God, I'm having flashbacks, man.
Yeah, sorry.
And you can do the same thing in inverse for your shutdown, and so that way, if you're trying to get down on the ground and shut down quickly for whatever reason, there's danger in the area, you need to get out of the ship. Okay, you press the button, it'll all just hard shutdown. But if you're landing in a hangar, then you've got the time. You can save yourself the wear and tear. Because that's why I like the wear and tear aspect of it, because you can you can do the same on the front and the back end. And
it kind of already exists. If you shut down power mid-quantum, you get a wonky ship. You get unstable power. You get all sorts of stuff. And it gets worse and worse the more you do it. Yeah. And that could be easily applied to just the normal, power off, power on sequence.
Well, True, you mentioned this in the chat, and I did remember them talking about this in one of the most recent videos where they talked about hey, they're going to have like 3 phases of equipment. There's like the boot up cycle, and then there's going to be, I can't remember what the in-between one was, but there was like a, almost ready for load. And then there's like, okay, up and running, operational, but you got initial boot up and then something in between, essentially an intermediary phase while it's in the charging process or whatever. But that would be like the indicator that I would imagine you'd want to. It's like, hey, don't, so if I go back to my example, it's like, okay, start up the coolers, and then I'm waiting in the appropriate phase of the boot up sequence for the coolers to be ready for load, or maybe I can do, the power plant and the intermediary load. But again, that might be a little more wear and tear on the component. I'm more likely to suffer a malfunction down the road, something along those lines. So, again, man, I look forward to the day where I'm paying an engineer, with my Perseus to be like, all right, man, start the girl up, get her ready. We'll be out of the bar in 5 minutes. I want that ship prepped and ready to dust off.
Hey,
you know,
8 hours
with
bottle
good
of throttle,
components.
baby. Hold on.
Yeah. With with everything ready to go, and I don't want to hear about wear on the components and stuff like that. 2 weeks into our extended gaming session in Pyro.
Yeah, you're the engineer, you're the manager. Maybe you have one engineer and they're doing all three duties, but as the manager, you're trying to save on those components and not put on the wear and tear. So yeah, it behooves you to get those things going, and to do those things right. That's.
Would it make sense that the larger the ship, the larger the component, the longer time boot up will be? Mm-hmm. Maybe your coolers on your Gladius need 10 seconds before they're able to take load. Giggity. But maybe the coolers on your Perseus need like 3 minutes before you can turn the power plant on.
Yeah.
God forbid your whole D that's
waiting
sitting
games,
behind
as long as it's engaging during the waiting game, though. Like, so if it's a matter of like, okay, you've got a 3-minute timer, or maybe, we probably dial it down.
I was just really exaggerating the difference between the sizes, but yeah.
No, but you bring up a good point. I mean, like, what would be engaging still for an engineer at that point is like, maybe it's a timer of a band, and it's like, it's the old school Gears of War reload sequence where you had 2 bands, and if you got it in one band, you'd have like a decent timed reload, and if you got it within a really short period of time, like you'd have like a badass reload, and like the next 6 rounds out of the mag would do more damage. It'd be nice if it was
if you like go to start it and there's some sort of mini game or some shit that you're talking about.
Yeah, I think it'd be that simple. I'd love that, actually. Be like, ooh, I timed that just right. And not only that, but that's a feel game too. Like, when it's for different weapons and you're consistently using that weapon, even back in the old Gears of War, it was like, oh, I get that timing on the reload down the more I use that weapon. Then you switch to the shotgun, it's like, the timing's all different. It'll take a little bit to get used to that.
That would talk about mastery. You were talking about earlier.
That would lean into the mastery of the given ship. When you're consistently the engineer of a hammerhead and stuff like that, and you're like, dude, I got this timing down, and stuff. You've made yourself that much more marketable. It's like, okay,
not only learning the ship, but learning the components on the ship. So like, if you know that ship has, whatever component X, and then your pilot didn't tell you that they changed it to component Y, and you miss your timing band, then that makes you pissed off at the pilot or the owner of the ship or whoever that like. So that kind of, I would love that level of granularity for engineering play.
Yeah, and it's easy to gamify.
Valuable.
Yeah, it's easy to gamify because if you think about it like that, it's just like what we do for mining. The difficult rocks. Your difficult rock, it could be the same thing in essence as your capital size military grade A component, and you've got a window this big during when your cooler is getting going in order to hit the button on the power plant in order to get them really in sync, in order to get whatever that benefit is. And if you don't hit it, if you're not paying attention, then you don't get the benefit. You can just press the button and then you miss it and it's no big deal. It'll still start and you miss it by a second or two, but you just don't get the benefit. Same thing with the shutdown inverse. But it's just a UI thing. You don't have to. I don't think we need to get to the point where, okay, I need one person over there at the power plant and the other person over here at the cooler, and I need you to flip this switch. No, that's dumb. Do it from the console. But that's something that you can easily gamify with UI that gives you rewards, that makes it engaging. And like you were saying, if it is a capital class component, it takes longer. Okay, well, I've got the capital class coolers starting, and they've got a timer on them. It's got about 2 minutes. Okay, sweet. I can run over here and get this done and come back, in order to be more efficient.
Right, you can prep your power plant or something,
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, I don't feel like maybe your Gladius you can get out, especially fighters of sorts, because you want those to be fast startup response, right? Mm-hmm. And there's also, like we used to do with like deployed, you stage it so that it's a shorter startup, a much shorter startup.
An abbreviated.
You get in, flip a few things. Yeah, it's a really abbreviated sequence, and you're off and going. Now you could do that with your fighters that are staged on carriers or wherever. But your fighter should be a quick startup. You want them to be quick. I shouldn't be able to hop in an 890 and press one button and I'm flying away, man. That seems silly to me. I'm starting up a crazy huge spacecraft with one button and peacing out.
Mm-hmm. And for realistic comparison, we have a designated underway day, where we literally throw lines off the ship and move away from the pier. I typically come in either the night before or the day before to start up the reactor.
Oh my gosh!
That's what it takes to get the reactor started up, the electric plant up, and if it's been shut down for longer, it's even more time.
Yeah, imagine.
It's one thing when I've only been in port like 2 or 3 days. It's another when it's like, okay, it's been like 8 months. Like that is now there's a whole bunch of other stuff that goes into it because it's been what we call like a long-term shutdown. So, and honestly, like big like yachts, cruise ships, stuff like that, it's similar things. It's like engineering has to come in well before it's time to cast off lines and get underway.
I was just
to make sure. Yeah.
I was just going to like make a naval comparison. I'm not in the Navy, but it probably takes a hell of a lot longer to get an aircraft carrier underway than a cruiser,
Oh, for sure.
I can totally imagine size equals time, and it should be that way in game as well, I believe. Now, again, you got to balance realism with fun.
And that you bring up a good point though, because if that's what real life is like now, and that gives you good suspension of disbelief. We've had 900 years of advancements, and we're also playing a game. So it can take you a few minutes to get your capital class ship going, but like you're talking about, Sgt. Tickles, having the expectation that you're not going to be able to get off the ground quickly, and so that feeds into your decision making on the back end. Okay, do I shut down or do I leave it running? If I'm worried about the startup and getting my shields back up, and you're in your 890, God forbid you've parked your space yacht on Pyro 3, and turned everything off, okay, that feeds into your decision making, and that's, you as an individual and the people you're working with, making risk benefit decisions, and that's good gameplay, even if it, the startup sequence is a couple minutes, it's okay. Well, that's something you have to take into account.
There's a reason you have a crew as well.
Mm-hmm.
The crew would stay with the ship if you're going to go do an exploration or whatever on ground. The crew stays with the ship; it keeps it on.
I wish I could play that clip from Indiana Jones. Start the plane! Start the plane!
I mean, anything like that. Mm-hmm. Big ship is going to take a big crew. I've always said from the beginning, since I think it was the damn whatever it was, the first big ship, the MISC refueler. I'm brain farting.
Starfare.
Yeah, Starfare. One person should not be able to fly that ship. Maybe one person should be able to fly it once it's going or whatever, but it shouldn't. It should take multiple people in multiple stations to make a Starfarer go.
Yeah. I don't
either that or it takes you 20 fucking minutes to get it out of the station.
Yeah.
That's actually a good segue to our last question for the resource management side of the house. But before I ask it, I want to ask you guys, because I don't want to assume, but I think it'd be kind of fun. We've had 2 questions come up in chat. Are you guys pressed for time this evening? Do you mind doing a couple Q&A questions at the end?
I'm good.
I don't mind.
Cool. So I'll save those. If you have questions in chat, I think we'll take 3 more. We already have 2. But if you have questions in chat, do me a favor and use the crayons at the bottom of chat, and you can highlight your message if you have a question, and you can go ahead and send that on. That makes it so I can see it more easily, and I'll copy it onto our document, and we'll go through those after we get through the components and subcomponents portion. And before I do, I've had like a bunch of follows since we got started, so I really appreciate everybody who is new to the channel, new to the podcast, and for throwing me a follow. I am going to plug myself on YouTube. So do me a favor, if you don't mind, I would really appreciate a subscribe on YouTube. I'm really trying to get over to that 1K mark, so that way I start getting ad revenue, because that ad revenue will go to stackup.org. So
didn't they relax it to 500?
So they relaxed the partner rules to 500, but you don't get ad revenue until 1,000. So I can do memberships and super chats and all that stuff. But selfish plug.
Some tricksy
but,
marketing on their part.
Yeah, that's how they get you. But you were talking about Sgt Tickles about you should have multiple people in order to get these things running. Otherwise you're running around like a chicken with your head cut off doing the 3 jobs by yourself. It will take a whole lot longer. And God forbid you're trying to get away. Versus trying to just leave the station in a timely manner. So we'll start with you, Sgt Tickles. Are you interested in engineering gameplay as being the engineer, as well as doing your own ship or vehicle maintenance? Like, are you the kind of space dad who changes the oil and does your own brakes on your car, or do you see yourself outsourcing it to players or NPCs once that becomes a thing?
If it's interesting, I'm down to do it. If it's tedious and if I find it tedious and boring, no, I'm good. I'll pass it on to someone who maybe enjoys doing it.
Now, does that change based off of what you're doing?
I think it changes based off of ships. A small 1-2 person ship, a freelancer, or that medium, small size Cutlass type thing. I might do my own stuff. Maintaining my hull E, probably not.
Yeah,
So I think it really comes down to ship size.
So like if it's a big ship and you're wanting to captain the ship, you're thinking you want to outsource it. But if you're not necessarily captaining it, it's smaller multi-crew or just a single person, you're thinking you want to do your own maintenance.
Yeah, I mean, again, if it's fun, sure.
Mm-hmm.
If it's interesting and engaging, I'm down to do it. I
see that as one of those things where, if you don't want to do it, if you're not interested in it, you're doing the resource management, engineering, gameplay, all that tuning stuff is optional. You just won't get the benefits from it. You'll be at stock, and when you're at a station, you can pay the grease monkeys in the hangar to, replace this component, replace that component, do whatever. You just have to pay for it versus doing it yourself. And so that's one thing I always find interesting, because that's a real life parallel for everybody. Like, I don't know jack about my truck. I have, that, and it's a new truck, and those things are super complicated. I don't do anything on a truck my own. But when it comes to, I'm clinical, so I don't ask a doctor for hardly anything. I can do it my damn self. And I'm decent with computers. I built my desktop right over there, the whole streaming setup. I don't ask for help. I don't have anyone come out and do any of this stuff. I want to do it myself. But when it comes to my truck, I think of it as that way. The truck is beyond my scope, my abilities.
Right.
It's too much for me. It's not something I'm interested in, versus I find the computers or I find medicine interesting. It's within my purview.
And that's 100%. I also think that you shouldn't be able to fly anything bigger than maybe a freelancer or that size solo, because I don't think that all the engineering options should be available to the pilot. Yeah. I don't think that the shields or the power triangle or any of that should be available to the pilot. You should need other people, engineers and such, to fly bigger ships, and that would kind of, I don't want to say force. I hate for it to force people to do stuff that they don't want to do, or to maybe play multiplayer. But I'm sorry, if you sign up to fly a big ship, you signed up for playing multiplayer. So I think that would
base
force
take. Base take.
It would.
It's either multiplayer or you sign up for multi-crew.
Yeah. Either that or you have to hire NPCs. If you don't want to play with other people, hire NPCs.
NPC crew is a myth tree.
Yeah,
but you shouldn't. You shouldn't be able to have access to all the engineering options as a pilot on a larger ship. I think that's kind of silly.
I think I get what you're saying. You shouldn't have everything right here at your fingertips as the pilot. Your engineering console is back there. If you remember on the Hammerhead, which is like the sort of the model for big ships, the engineering console is back in front of engineering. It's not up here in the cockpit. And so you could
ride at the back of the bus.
That's and if you're
so same way in the submarine. I'm at the back.
You can get out of the pilot seat and you can run back there and do something, but no one's driving. And so if you're if you're just cruising along, that's one thing. But I agree. I don't think it should be.
If you have a big ship, you've signed up for multiplayer.
Yeah.
Yeah. And even you people are like, it's a space game. We should be able to do it like this in the future. Like Star Trek even did that. Scotty was down in the bowels of the ship. He was not hanging out on the bridge. Him and his whole team.
Yeah. Find me the sci-fi universe where one guy does it all.
Even in Star Wars with the Millennium Falcon, he still has to run back. Chewie has to take controls, and he's got to run back and fuck with stuff. It's like, and that's a relatively quote small ship.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you never even saw the reactor guys on like a Star Destroyer, but they were there.
Exactly.
They were there. They're down there. I always felt
and they all died. They all died.
Yeah, those guys are just collecting a paycheck, man. Trying to feed your kids. Sorry.
But yeah, no. Night Cobb, same question. Are you interested in engineering gameplay, or are you just burnt out on being an engineer IRL? Do you see yourself outsourcing it? Do you want to instead be the pilot? Or do you actually think you're going to engage in this gameplay? Is this something you're looking forward to doing yourself?
No, yeah, I got zero interest. I've got a day job for that. No, but I mean, I want it to be engaging. Here's the thing: I know people that have talked to me in like Discords and about Star Citizen and stuff like that, and some of them are like, they spend a lot of time on Urkel. They're the min-maxers, right? They're always looking to like squeeze the utmost performance out of whatever fighter they've bought or whatever ship they've bought. And, I want them to have what is obviously engaging gameplay for them, where it's like, they've got choice and it matters, and it's going to depend on the situation that you're in, the environment that you're in for a ship. And I want that to matter for them because I want to hire them. I want there to be player-driven value behind, skill sets, player skill sets. And I think that's the best part about this game for the most part, because it's not like Eve where, you bring value because you trained, warp drive skill to level 20, over the course of like 4 years. I want somebody that's good and knowledgeable about my ship that I own, that I can hire, create a beacon for, an engineering. I need engineer beacon or whatever so I can rate them, and take them out with me into the black and count on them, and develop a little bit of a relationship in a way of, hey, if I need an engineer again, are you going to be available? Well, I'll put you on retainer. A new money sink for me.
Yeah.
And I love stuff like that, and I want stuff like that because I want it myself, but in a different aspect of the game. But I want other people that want to have that style of gameplay to have that. I have no desire, but I want to be the combat pilot or a gunner. I don't get to do that. I don't get to do that shit in real life. I want my fantasy. Yeah. I don't want to do the stuff that I do at work.
I would say that really the only ship that I want to do my own maintenance on would be my Valkyrie, just because my Valkyrie, like that's my baby. Oh, holy crap, we just got raided by Soul Citizens with a party of 54. Hey-o. My goodness.
Hey.
Soul Citizens, thank you so much for the raid. Whoa, holy moly. The sound alert is going to go nuts.
Part of the crew, man. Part of the crew.
Weirdly enough, we can't hear it.
Oh.
Yep. So
part of the crew.
Is it not coming out?
We're in a Discord call. I'm not listening to everybody.
Yeah, part of the ship. Part of the crew.
You guys sound bite them away. I don't care if you can hear us. We'll talk about something military for a hot second while you guys get it out.
Part of the crew. Part of the ship. Part of the crew.
Tell me your favorite Blackhawk story, or I'm sorry, Pavehawk for the Pavehawk. Yeah, Pavehawk. Part of the ship. Part of the crew. Part of the crew. Or maybe your funniest one. You got a funny one?
I've got a couple funny ones. I threatened to smack the co-pilot with a crash axe once, because the crash axe is on my gunner's console. Yeah, there's an axe with a pointy end and an axe end to smash out of not much. I mean, the thing's pretty much open. But anyways, we were doing high maneuvering characteristics and capabilities, blah, 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 with weapon school. So those were, this guy was trying to get his weapon school patch and, think Top Gun, but Air Force. And so he's trying to be the best of the best and max maneuver this aircraft, right? We're doing low G sims. So that's where you pop, and then at the top, you kind of bring the nose down and really just you're low G. Pilot's like, all right, don't take the instructor pilot says, don't take it too hardcore, right? Let's no need, not necessary.
Let's ease into
it's a basic
this.
ass exercise. So we're doing it, and this motherfucker pops, right? And all of a sudden he just shoots the nose down, and I come up, and I fucking come down and just whammo, right on my nuts, landed on my nuts, and as pilot Gunner, go ahead, Gunner. I said, if you do that again, I'm putting this fucking crash axe through your goddamn helmet. I just landed on my nuts, and which, if you know what the seat of a Black Hawk is, or any of those, it's some cloth draped over a fucking metal bar.
Yeah.
And I came back down full force on that bar, and I explained to him what he did. And he's like, "Yeah, sorry about that one. I owe you a beer." Yeah, that was.
I like that. I like that.
Definitely not my favorite maneuver. No.
I love it usually.
I am.
But I went up, smacked my fucking head off the roof, and then came down and landed on my nut. There's
I like my either straight level flying, although Nap of the Earth is pretty dang fun, especially around the mountains. I do enjoy that. So everybody who just came in from the raid from Soul Citizens, thank you so much for joining us. Hope you guys had a good stream over there. I didn't catch what you guys were talking about this evening, but we are talking about resource management, engineering, gameplay, components, and subcomponents, just because that's a big part of what CIG has been developing recently, actually for a while now, but there's been a lot of emphasis over it, so we're just talking about that sort of stuff.
4 years, 4 or 5? 3 years is recently.
It actually goes back farther than that, but with the engineering thing in March, they're it's one thing just to have little tidbits in the monthly reports, but at CitizenCon and thus going forward, it's getting pretty interesting, and I think we're going to see it probably in the next year or two, or at least start seeing parts of it. So, or it could be sooner. We don't know. But. If you are unfamiliar with the stream and this podcast in particular, Night Cobb is a U.S. Navy engineer on a nuclear submarine, and then Sgt Tickles is a U.S. Air Force veteran door gunner on a HH-60 Pavehawk, right? Pavehawk.
Pavehawk.
And you Pavehawk did missions with the PJs, right?
Yep.
Cool. And then I'm Trio 311, former Infantry Marine and current Army National Guard flight paramedic on UH-60 Blackhawks. So what we do on this podcast in particular is we talk about different topics, and we sort of throw in a little bit of our prior and or current military experience for reference, just so you can hear what we're thinking about in relation to these things, because there are a lot of interesting parallels that people might not think about. Soul Citizens, guys, I think I don't know who is on the stream this evening, because I know you guys have a variety of hosts. I think some or all of you are going to CitizenCon in October, so I will see you there. Really hoping I can meet you guys in person. I've met Fastcart at CitizenCon 2948. We had ribs. And so looking forward to wishing him a happy birthday. So thanks again so much for the raid. Thank you so much for all the follows. Really appreciate the support. You guys are awesome. Thank you, North End Trooper, for shouting them out. Appreciate doing that. So if you don't already follow Soul Citizens, they do a really great show, really good content, and just genuinely super awesome people. And if anyone in chat is going to CitizenCon, why don't you sound off in chat? Let us know. So not only am I going to be there, but I am going to have a Trio 311 shirt made so that way I'm easily recognizable. But I'm also going to make some PVC patches, morale patches. If you're
just
not
do
aware
a
of
crayon
those,
in your mouth.
Yeah,
a crayon in your mouth, like you're
like a
smoking
cigarette.
But I could put it at the end of one of those smoking sticks, so it could be a fancy.
Yeah, crayon is much cheaper. You don't need to have a special T-shirt made.
But so what when I do relic hunts in my Valkyrie, my Valkyrie has the nickname of being the Vomit Comet. And so I had a sort of like a nose art image done for that. And so I'm going to have PVC patches made with that. So if you see me at CitizenCon, I'm going to have 20 of them made. So the first 20 people to come up and say, hey, and we can get a picture, share it for the social medias and stuff, I'll give you one of my patches that I'm having made.
Wait, are they Velcro on the back?
Thing. Yeah, Velcro. The PVC, the sort of rubber.
Bro, you better send me one of those.
Oh yeah, no,
I can't go to CitizenCon this year. I'm gonna be underway. Probably.
I'm making a bunch to have as like giveaways, but I'm also going to bring a bunch with me to for CitizenCon. But yeah, it's like rubber like this.
Exclusive.
And then Velcro on the back.
I do this podcast with you.
Yeah. No, all the Pathfinders co-hosts and Armchair Admirals and Generals co-hosts will get one, as well as my mods for my Discord and Twitch. And then I'm bringing I'm probably going to bring about 24 or so to CitizenCon with me, just to sort of have a giveaway, get people to come up and say, hey, take pictures and stuff. So make sure if you're going to CitizenCon, come up and say hi, hey, would love to meet everybody, and talk about Star Citizen. Yeah, I do this podcast, I demand merchandise. Yes.
So the thing is, like, I know I'm the Submariner, and the irony is I'm like of the 2 helicopter guys, and then you got the one nuke Submariner over here, and I wore the helicopter hat today. I feel.
Oh yeah, you did.
It was an homage to you guys, and then
I did the helicopter right before the stream. Does that count?
You did the helicopter.
Yeah, that counts. Sorry,
I haven't.
Why do I feel like I've confused everybody?
Wait. Are we talking about the same thing? Helicopter.
Do I need to explain it? This is going on YouTube, no? It was supposed to just be a joke. We weren't supposed to get stuck on this.
Nah, it's okay.
Anyway, I'll bring it back around.
Think of an elephant.
Anyway, I got a flight jacket. I'm big into DCS and stuff like that. So I got myself a nerdy flight jacket, and I'm big about collecting patches for it. So that's why I want one.
Yep, I will definitely send you a patch. Don't worry, you'll get one.
Hey, I've got a flight jacket. I've probably thrown 10 away.
See, I love those things. I'm like a big flight jacket fan.
The aviation cold and wet weather gear that the Army gives me is just amazing, and I get it for free. And they throw the stuff at me. It's
part
just
of the crew, part of the ship.
I need to figure out.
Part of the ship, part of the crew, part of the ship. Part of the crew, part of the ship.
I need to figure out a keybind.
You don't want
to turn that.
You don't want to say this on stream. I don't think you want to say what you're going to say on stream.
No, it's the sound alert. I just need to think of a keybind to turn it off, because otherwise, if like we get it raid, there's a whole bunch of.
Tree has to hear it. We do not have to hear it. It's pretty nice. I actually like it. I get to see the alert on your screen. But
it like pops up and.
Yeah. And I can turn it off so you can't see it, but I don't know how to easily turn it off so you can't hear it.
You can't easily do it.
What I like is I do enjoy watching Tree's poor Marine brain short out every time a funny sound is made, though, and he loses his train of thought. Yeah, it's just like he'll come back to us.
So let's go ahead and we'll dive into the second half of the show, talking about components, subcomponents, and really how they sort of relate to tuning. So let's see who I gave. Night Cobb, you were last on the last question, right? Or you're second, correct?
It doesn't matter, man. Just ask your questions.
Okay. So, and I'm gonna preface this. So, because we've got a lot of extra people who just showed up. Don't know how long you guys have been in the verse and how much time you've spent studying the verse. Stanton is a very small system. It's only 5 AU across. Pyro is actually 13 AU, and that's like if you think of Stanton as extra small, then Pyro is small. There are medium systems, there are large systems, there are even extra large systems. Most systems in the game sort of would fall within the extra small and small category, kind of like most ships in the game. but there are a good number of star systems that are much bigger. And so, but they also vary in how much infrastructure they have. So if you think of it almost like if you live in the US, living in a small state that's heavily populated, there's very little distance in between cities versus a large state, lightly populated, big distances in between cities, much less infrastructure. You're, Connecticut or Massachusetts versus Montana or even Alaska. That's the difference here. With regards to Stanton, Nightcob, small size, high infrastructure, relatively low crime, given your preferred gameplay, what you're doing right now, and what ships you're using. What role do the differences in components play for you? With the grades that we have, the classifications, your military and this and that, your letter grades, and then even brand, because you can have different brands that have those classifications as well. As far as I remember, I don't pay much attention to it.
I think the big thing, and this is what I like, and I want the environment to also dictate the variable pretty heavily. But I mean, a place like Stanton, I feel like if you're hanging out in Stanton, you have the luxury of leaning into high performance, less efficiency, or actually I'll just stick with that because I think that's essentially the categories. And that they've kind of already narrowed down: performance, efficiency, economy, kind of like civilian. That was like the idea was like military was all about performance and some kind of efficiency, but not much. And then it was like civilian was their design document had civilian as like, okay, this is kind of like the jack of all trades, kind of sits right in the middle of everything. And then you got industrial, which is like, hey, we don't, this is high efficiency and less, what's the other, better durability, I guess would be the way to say it. And then,
right.
Less chance of malfunction. And then finally, and I thought this was interesting on their design document because I never looked at it that way on Urkel. And that was performance okay, performance above all, low efficiency, quick wear times, and stuff like that. But I think that's the environment that Stanton creates, is because everything's so readily available. It's a relatively small system, and it's got good infrastructure. It's a matter of, okay, well then, that would be the fun part of being in Stanton as opposed to Pyro, where you don't have to think about the long-term decisions of how you outload your ship, because it would be like, sure, military grade A. I'm in it. I'm in it to win it, and I'm ready to fight. Or performance grade A. Competition grade A, and let's go that way. And, but what I think that should come at a cost of is money. So, maybe you are using military grade A or, competition grade A components, but maybe those burn out on you quick, or maybe they just cost a lot upkeep. Maybe every time you do repairs on them or every time you do maintenance on them. I love the idea of maintenance on components, by the way. That's something very real life for me. Again, this is why I don't want to do engineering, but I look forward to it for other people's gameplay. But maybe you got to spend AUEC to maintain, those military grade A components that you're running around with your Gladius in. But man, when you get into a dogfight, you're like, okay, this is why it's there. But then I won't jump ahead to the Pyro question. You just asked me about Stanton. You're going to ask me later how it changes for Pyro, aren't you?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'll hold. Turn it over to Tickles. It's Tickles' turn.
Yeah, Sergeant Tickles. And real quick, let's preface this because right now we all have this is what I do in game right now, partly because this is what's available. So we're gonna that's what we're talking about for Stanton, right now in 319, 319.1, and coming into 320. This is what you're doing right now, and then later on, in 4.0, 4.2, what have you, we'll talk about what you want to be doing in the future.
Sorry, I'm responding to chat.
No worries. Yeah. So with regards to Stanton, small size, high infrastructure, low crime, given your preferred gameplay and what ships you fly now, what role do the differences in components play for you?
Absolutely none. At most, a little bit faster on a quantum drive, but I don't notice it at all. I don't min-max. Quantum drive is where it really shows for me and my gameplay, whether we're hauling, whether we're just fucking about the verse, right? Oh shit, we got to stop and refuel the quantum, or I mean, that at most is it. But most of my stuff stays stock now because they kind of really homogenized the components on their last major update. It used to be like, wow, you want this quantum drive, you want this shield, you want this cooler, depending on sizes. And then they did a component update that really brought them all from being this far apart to being this far apart.
Yep.
Uses a little bit more gas, but you go a little bit faster. Whereas it used to be like, well, you use a lot of gas, but you're going to cut minutes off your quantum.
Yeah.
And so since they did that, I have not messed with components at all because I was so disappointed with that upgrade. Or update, sorry, not upgrade.
That was one of those things where like I'm not overly critical of CIG just because like I follow the development and I'm pretty patient with it. That was one of those things where I'm like, what why did you do this? That I could see if hey, we're doing this right now because resource management is coming in and everything's going to get rebalanced with resource management. Well, we don't have it, and so like you said, the differences are other than with the quantum drives, it's really pretty negligible for most other things. Like people focus on getting around quickly and weapons.
The weapons, they homogenize that too. I hate to keep using this word, but like you either use energy weapons or you run out of ammo in 2 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
And all the energy weapons do the same amount of damage.
Yep.
I mean, give or take, plus or minus a few DPS. Not enough to make a damn difference in any way, shape, or form to change anything. All I do is I go on, and I know we're not weapons, but weapons are kind of components, so
they are.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll just take everything. I have enough ships that I can siphon weapons off shit I don't use much. I'll just change everything to energy weapons. Because otherwise you're reloading, you get not even a full fight worth of ammo out of ballistics. Mm-hmm. Like it is laughable.
And I know you weren't there for one of the last shows, but we talked about weapons, and that kind of goes back to what I was talking about earlier with resource management. I feel like you solve a little bit of the ballistic problem of why it's a choice. If you go back to, lasers require capacitors, which require fuel.
Mm-hmm.
Ballistics don't require that. Or at least they should require a lot less of it because they're not, their magazine is not refilled from your capacitor. Sure, they require some power to operate. Like a railgun is going to need power still, but its ammunition source is not a source of power. So, I feel like if energy weapons are giving you a double hit, well, you just increase the viability of ballistics now. But
yes, and
you have a different logistic requirement.
On that note, before I ADHD and it poofs out of my head, ballistics are great in the sense that you don't need to fuck with your power triangle anymore. You can put your power triangle almost all the way to shield or between shield and boost to recover your boost.
Yep.
Because you don't require it. Changing your power triangle all the way to weapons does jack shit. It doesn't help your performance at all. Now, it does help your performance a lot with energy weapons. You gain capacity or shots.
Yeah, you get higher magazine essentially. Yeah.
Now, that's at the chance of running out of ammo before you kill one tiny ship, though.
Yep.
So, I don't know.
I gotta address a question in the chat real quick because we were talking about components, and I know a lot of people not in the servers make an assumption about military components, and I know Tree said it a lot about military grade A, right? It would be like you would think it'd be like state of the art, highly efficient, the best of all categories. You know what the truth about, at least in my world, and I'm sure these guys will probably attest to the same. The thing about military components is, they're all built by contractors and usually the lowest bidder. But what we do try and maximize, at least in the United States military, is the logistical aspect of components. So for my real world example, the components related to reactor control, engineering plant, and stuff like that, I have repair parts and new components readily available to me, and they are high performing in a lot of cases. I would not call them state of the art by any measure, but they're easy to replace, easy to obtain, and there's a steady supply chain created for them. So that's really where we win on like military grade components. Don't get me wrong, there's some exceptions in areas, certain fields. I'm sure like the F-35, I would hope, is using like some kind of state of the art,
Right.
And don't get me wrong, like
it was state of the art when they first started designing it
In the 90s.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Sonar systems would be, an example in the submarine world, right? Like sonar is heavily developed, and it is somewhat reliable, but it is one of those things. It's not so reliable that I can count on it always working. Like ship breaks all the time in the military, but I have a really good logistical supply chain with readily available repair parts, and what I wouldn't say they were necessarily easy to maintain, but they're definitely easy to repair most of the time. Would you guys agree? Easy to replace. Actually, that's a better way to say it. Easy to replace would be the best way to say it. You're right.
They're not necessarily, anyone who's ever been in the military knows if you hear military grade, you laugh at it because it tends to be garbage.
Yeah.
So the one of the things I was thinking about before the stream that I wanted to bring up in regards to military grade. So we have military style ships, and a big part of the difference in the way military style ships are designed versus the more civilian ships in game is especially the larger ones, is they have more redundancy. So they have multiples of a component, but then within those components, one of the things that's part of the subcomponent system that obviously isn't in game yet, is that military grade components are supposed to have more, let's just say fuses for now, because they haven't gone deeper into what other smaller components are going to be as part of, hey, you can replace this fuse and this fuse or whatever to get the component working again. Because you will be able to do maintenance on an individual component. But the way they've described military components is that they have more redundant fuses within them in order to prevent them from going down. So not only does the ship have redundant in that it has 2 coolers instead of 1, but the military grade components have redundancy. So that way, if they take damage, okay, well, it'll burn out this fuse, but it's still running because it has 3 more instead of 2 or 3. It has more redundant within it, and that's one of the things that they've talked about within the design of components themselves. And actually, to bring it back to something that Sgt Tickles actually touched on accident, is our weapons are actually modular. We don't have the system in game yet, but every gun since like 2017, I think, that they've made, and they've actually gone back and remade some of them. The way that the weapon is made in the game is that it has multiple individual components, and so that way, once the system and the tech that underpins that is in and working, you'll be able to swap out the barrels, or your whatever the different named pieces are in your laser repeater or something, in order to give it properties. Just like you'll be able to swap out your components with in different subcomponents, you're actually going to be able to modify your weapons as well in game. That's something that they've built into the game. Every gun has it. It just doesn't function because the system that it runs on isn't in game yet. So they've told us almost nothing about it, but I found it when I was doing the research for it for the Pathfinders podcast. And there's a big old Around the Verse segment from one of the art guys who was making guns, and he was going through and remaking guns that we already had in a way so that when the system comes in, you can swap out that barrel, you can swap out that capacitor within it, or the feed mechanism in order for it to have better accuracy, higher rate of fire, greater capacity, all those sorts of things. So there's going to be a lot. We're talking more about components right now, but there's more fine tuning that's going to be available in terms of weapons, but underpinned by the same system.
Soon TM.
Yeah, soon TM. Yeah. Who the F knows? Because that thing that I'm talking about was from Around the Verse in like 2017. but they had gone back and remade a bunch of the guns from before that, and all the guns going forward were made in that way because that's the plan, but they haven't talked about it since, so who the hell knows? But not a priority, but the amount of that's part of the why I named the episode The Right Tool for the Job, because you're going to be able to, part of it is having the right ship in order to do the thing. You might, if a ship isn't equipped to do the job at all, it's not equipped to do the job at all. But you can, the job varies wildly depending on the environment and where you are and what level of thing that you're doing. Your the size of the system, the amount of infrastructure, that sort of stuff. So, no, good stuff on that first question, because I'm the same way. I'm a dropship pilot. I don't give a crap about components. The only thing I'll occasionally buy is a quantum drive just to get me around Stanton a little bit faster. But for the most part, I'm just going from from one station and doing multiple drops to do bunker missions or retrieval ops or something like that multiple times, and then we're running out of fuel or running low, I need to go refuel, and that's it. It doesn't nothing about the components really affects how my Valkyrie performs, and that's the majority of my gameplay. I have started to dabble in mining just because mining got a big update. And I find that fun, yeah. But then you're messing with your mining components, but not really your power plant, your coolers, or anything. So
yeah,
your shields.
I hate to say it, but I think malfunctions is going to be the great equalizer for components for the most part. I think once you're mid-combat and your cooler loses a massive amount of efficiency because you have, some kind of malfunction with it and it requires action to deal with, and especially if you're in a single seat fighter and it's like, oh crap, my weapons are overheating. My attrition 4s are overheating too quickly, and now I'm reduced in capability of the fight. That's when all of a sudden people are gonna be like, man, I should have been doing the maintenance on that military grade A cooler.
Yeah,
I wasn't doing the maintenance, and I don't like doing the maintenance. Maybe I switch to a civilian grade A cooler, and I don't worry about the maintenance as often, or industrial. But if maybe they were a min-maxer and they were like, oh, I'm going to pick the best cooler performance wise, and they picked a competition cooler, and within their first dogfight, it's already because they didn't do the startup correctly, they didn't do the more efficient, the more better durability startup, by doing a longer one and focusing more on the process. And the first dogfight they're in, they get a malfunction, and they're gonna be like, well, screw. First they're gonna have the reaction like, screw this game. Why did I buy this? But because I'm not sure people are ready for some of these systems yet. But that I think is going to be where you really start to separate out components and then additionally subcomponents, right? Because you can take an industrial maintenance low component. At least that's what I would imagine. I would imagine civilian industrial require less maintenance. Performance competition and military are going to be a lot of maintenance. I'm sure these two guys can vouch for military requires a lot of maintenance. You want performance? Cool. It's going to require a lot of maintenance. In competition,
the more components something has, the more there is to go wrong.
Yeah, absolutely.
And in real life, at least, I'm sure it's the same for your world. There are certain items that if they're fucked up or missing or something, that's a no-go. You can't fly. You can't launch. You can't do whatever.
Yep.
And sometimes things quit mid-flight. And we're down to one rat out. Oh, the other one took a shit. Well, that's RTB. We're done. That's
yeah.
Got to have X amount, and it's for daytime, nighttime. But we're real life bullshit there. But there are certain components that are required for flight, and if those components take a shit, you got to land.
So I had a great moment. I'll share this real quick because I totally agree with you, and that's real life for me too on the submarine. I've been on boats pulled back into port immediately because of equipment failures. Mm-hmm. I was out in the Scorpius the other night doing dogfights, doing the bounty hunting stuff with a gunner, and my timing was off. I caught a missile from a Sabre. size 3 missile. And he caught me in just the right way. It killed my quantum drive. I had everything else. Quantum drive was dead. And it was one of those things like I could fly the ship around. You know, I still had 3 out of the 4 lasers on the wings. So I mean, it was semi-combat capable. But we were done with the bounty, or we finished the bounty. And it was one of those things like I tried powering on the quantum drive, couldn't make it happen. And I was like, oh, man. And we had to abandon the ship. Like, it was just one of those things like I had to call a friend over, came over in his Vulture, ironically, and picked us up and took us back. And, you know, it was one of those things like me, I wasn't mad. I wasn't even the slightest bit mad about it. I was actually like, this is the gameplay I've been dreaming of. I want these moments where, you know, component failures have consequence like that, like where it's, all right, shit, RTB, we done. This fight is over. Or, you know, it's even more dire of like, well, we need a ride. And I think, or, you know, and the real gameplay that it's going to bring in is the engineer on a multi-crew ship. Like, that's going to be a big deal. Because then it's, you know, it's not like me in the Scorpius, you know, a 2-seat fighter where I don't have like access to replacement components and stuff like that. Because I don't think that storage was ever meant for that. No. But, you know, it's going to be one of those things. It's like, either we can fix it with whatever limited materials we have on, so maybe it is a subcomponent or a fuse or whatever, or it's game over, it's too damaged, and this thing is scrap. Or I get it towed, which that would be nice. You know, the SRV would have been handled nicely in that situation.
That, well, can the SRV quantum with something in tow?
Yep, that's a great question.
That's another one. I mean,
that's a great question. Yeah. I don't know the answer.
But not only that, like
that was asked in the Q&A. So yes, it can.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Cool, okay, cool. There you go.
I wouldn't be, but I'm sure there will be limitations to like how big something is. Yeah.
Instead of having someone come get you, you could have them bring you a quantum drive.
Yeah, that would be cool too. That would be cool too.
Yeah, because you really honestly, you don't need to bring
that.
Your exact one. It's not like it has to be. It just has to be this size.
It has to be a size 2 or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Honestly, in the current state of the game, like I that actually was feasible. I could have had. Well, no,
it's got to be a ship that you could take stuff in and out of.
Yeah,
and I don't know if
it would have been a lot of logistics to make that work. It would have been a lot of logistics to make that work.
Right.
But yeah, in the future that would be very doable. But you know,
not every ship has removable components right now.
It's true.
Yep. Soon TM.
That'd be
again.
Yeah. We're close. We're close on some of those things.
Mm-hmm.
All right, sorry, I stole some of your time there. Dream.
No, you're good. This is good stuff. I'm all about it. Yeah, take it off the bounty ship. Use every piece of the
none
buffalo.
Of them were soft death. We thought about that.
Mm-hmm.
None of them were soft death, and you guys know how it is. That's actually kind of the big thing that was a disappointment. I say disappointment. I know it's just more time, but most of the bounties, right? Like unless it's a Saber, a Vanguard, or a Gladius, there are very, very, very few ships that you can salvage components off of, and they have to be soft deathed in the case of the fighters. You can't get them off a Saber or Gladius if they're hard deathed. Vanguards are kind of like iffy, and unfortunately, none of those were the ships that were. The Saber was full death. So,
all right. So next question. So, and this is just feeding off of this first one. We'll start with you, Sgt Tickles. So, in the future game, and not a specific point in time, because who the fuck knows, but in the future game, you know, we have more systems, we have larger star systems, there are systems with less infrastructure. Given your preferred gameplay and ship, then, you know, and let's go ahead and say you pick a gameplay in a ship that this is what you really want to be doing, you know, at this point in time. Maybe it's your whole E, maybe it's something else. How do you see yourself utilizing components and subcomponents to make your ship the right tool for the job, to really get it to do what you want it to do as good as you want to do it? And I'm going to be listening, but I'm going to go use the bathroom, which is right over there. So I'll be right back. I'm just going to mute my mic.
Take your mic with you so we can hear.
Yeah.
I always shake.
We're into that
5 or 6 times.
So.
Well, I guess space trucking would be what I would think about. And it would probably be not Stanton, probably a larger system. Also not Pyro, because that's dangerous. Unless you have a good contingent of protection with you.
Yeah.
Either way, I think still once again, your quantum drive would be important. Is it behoove you to be faster? Right? Is faster worth more money? Faster but using more fuel, or is slow and steady but not using fuel? Because I would think in the trucking industry, space trucking specifically, speed equals money, right? The faster you can get your shit there and get it unloaded and reloaded, the more money potentially you can make. So I would say quantum drive probably is still the big one. I don't know if power plant will be necessary by that time to let's say you do get a bigger, better quantum drive. It's going to take a bigger, better power plant to drive it. And then you need bigger, better coolers. Is everything just going to cascade? Am I going to overrun my power plant? I mean, there's a fuckload of what ifs in the future.
Yeah. Well,
but I definitely think the number one
built in now, right?
Yeah. The number one's definitely quantum drive and what it needs to support it. Because I think speed equals money when it comes to trucking. So,
yeah. I mean, what you're also balancing that with, I imagine, is like your overhead. You know, bottom line is like, if you got to pay so much in fuel, that is coming straight out of whatever you are going to make from the contract to haul whatever it was. So you know, it's like, okay, I've got to get it there within X amount of time to make the money. And maybe there is a bonus attached to it if I can get it within, you know, Y amount of time. But that's going to I got to balance that with, okay, but how much is that going to cost me with a high speed, less efficiency quantum drive? Whereas I can sacrifice maybe a little bit of time. Ooh, my timing is tighter now, and I have to be more careful as I go through X system. I have to take maybe a more dangerous route. But I save money on the fuel game. And then maybe you balance it out as like, okay, but you know, there's more risk that way. How much money is an escort through that one part of space going to cost me, or bribe? You know, and man, those are the decisions that I look forward to people having to make. That's fun gameplay, in my opinion. But
yeah, and that's why I don't think it's generally a component only issue. I think it's a lot of things.
Yeah.
Right. If I need speed, maybe I'm not taking an escort if I can zip around and not get interdicted. Right. Maybe I take an obscure ass path. I don't go straight from X planet to Y planet. Maybe I bounce around to the left, and maybe I want a more efficient drive to do that to avoid pirates. Right.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of thought that goes into it other than just, I'm going to pick this drive because it's better. So
yeah.
And there is
the environment being a big variable, and then like the cost analysis I look forward to a lot.
And there isn't a single better. There is a better for your personal preference, and that will change based off the situation too. And so along those lines, and I have a link that I'm going to put in chat for a resource regarding quantum drives in particular that most people are entirely unaware of. But it's CR doing what CR does, monologuing on Spectrum in 2019 about how quantum works, how it's envisioned to work, and what sort of things that they plan on incorporating in it. Some of it, and most of it, isn't in game yet because Stanton is so small. But I'm going to drop that link in chat for people if you want to peruse that, just to see where they're intending to go with it, because Stanton is only 5 AU. You can cross Stanton in one jump. There will be systems where you will make a jump and you can only maintain that quantum bubble for a certain period of time, and then you will not be able to maintain that field anymore. You'll come out of quantum. You'll have to wait for your quantum drive to cool down and then re-spool back up and keep going.
Oh man,
and so
it's like the old school BattleTech like hyper ships.
Well,
and
that brings up,
it's like you make a jump and it's like, all right, it's got to cool down. We're stuck here for a few days.
Yeah.
Well, that brings up blind jumps. Blind jumps would be great, because if I want to, or like on your map, pinning a place, I want to jump to this location because I know my bubble's going to run out here, and that's likely where pirates are waiting. I want to jump out before the pirates.
Yeah.
Maybe take an obscure route that's not on the known beaten path. Might cost me a little bit more in fuel or whatever, and time, because you got to wait for the cooldown and all that bullshit, right? However, you can avoid pirates, and well, hell, that's just the big one in general. If it's known that, most size 3s end in this location, give or take, 100 clicks or something, that's pretty easy to patrol. You just wait for someone to pop out of quantum and be stuck there and go take them over. So I think they really need to bring back blind jump / pinning a jump, right? It should be a planned coming out of quantum. I guess I can't think of a departure or whatever from quantum, so that it's not a jar to your system. It would be like normally coming out of quantum instead of a blind jump in a direction where you got to kill power and then your systems go fucky, killing your components.
Night Cobb, you might, I don't know if submarines actually even do this. I know the surface ships do it, where you're always tacking like that in order to make an irregular, you're going towards a certain place, but your route to get there is irregular like that. And that's kind of what we're talking about with, if you're going through Pyro, you're going through the null system, which is 120 AU, people, 120. And there are systems that are bigger, and null is a full-on pirate system, makes the Pyro pirates look tame because it is ruled by slavers. So take that into account. But that's one of those things where, okay, you can't make the jump all the way across that system from the jump point that you're coming out of to the one you need to go, and so you're gonna have to tack across. Well, maybe you want the quantum drive that is able to spool up quickly, so you're getting back up into quantum and going very quickly, for each jump that you have to make, or the cooldown is faster. Or if you are making longer jumps, you can pick a quantum drive that doesn't go as fast, but allows you to stay in quantum and just keep on trucking along at a slow and steady pace. It's more efficient. There's a lot of variables that feed into it, and that's what's going to, if Sgt Tickles is taking the safe route for the Stanton to Castra run, going from Stanton to Terra to Hadrian to Castra, then he's going to want probably going to want a fast drive to get that higher premium payout for his hauling jobs because you got it there sooner. Or maybe there isn't a premium payout and you're just going for the easy money and you're saving money on fuel. But if he's taken the shortcut, which is literally half the distance from Stanton to Pyro to Nyx to Castra, it's literally half the AU. And when it comes to jumping across systems, maybe you want to be able to tack across and do a whole bunch of jumps. But you're getting in and out of quantum. You quantum here, make a hard right, and then quantum here, make a left, and so you're unpredictable. You're avoiding those pockets because like they've talked about that for Pyro, they have those zones of influence, and maybe you're navigating around these bubbles based off of where the pirate stations are. Those are things that you're going to have to think about if that's your chosen route, because you're trying to save time and money. But you're taking the risk.
Yeah.
So Night Cobb, same question. This is, right now you're flying your Scorpius and you're flying around Stanton. It's 5 AU doing some bounties. A couple years from now, the ship you really want is out and the gameplay you really want to be doing is fully fleshed out and there's more star systems. How do you see components playing into what you're doing then?
I think it goes back to kind of what I talked about earlier about logistics and personnel management. Like, it's one of those things. It's like, okay, what I want is like, all right, guys, we're doing an extended campaign in the Perseus here in Pyro as either escorts or cargo haulers, or I honestly, that ship behind me, I like for the idea of like emergency response. Like, you did get trapped, but despite your best efforts, or you didn't plan carefully, you're in the thick of it, and we are an emergency response. Like, we are the distress beacon answerer guys, and we show up when they brought big stuff to tackle you and all that kind of stuff. And I like that idea, but that's one of those things that requires you to be on standby in that station. You can't just jump back to Stanton, so you've got to be geared for the long haul. What I think that requires is a couple things. Is one, I would want to maintain, because she's got to be fight ready and she's got to maintain an edge in combat, I want military components still, or at least a lot, the ones that matter to me the most in terms of performance. But that's where an engineer really makes their money in my mind. It's like, hey, listen, I'm not paying you to maintain a civilian freight hauler out here in the black. I'm paying you to maintain a legitimate warship with military grade equipment on board, which requires a lot of maintenance. It requires a lot of repair, and it requires you to baby her when necessary. Like, I'm going to need you to go through the long duration cold start if that was ever a thing, or at least, make sure that equipment gets started up in the right phase. And that, when we do have to pull hard maneuvers or put stress on her, like, that you are the one doing the maintenance, and you got to do the maintenance so that she's ready to fight, the next time. I mean, because that's what we do with real warships. And that's what I would expect. That's what's expected of me. That's what I would expect out of my engineering crew on a ship like that. Maintain her ready to fight and maintain her with that readiness with advantage. That's my gameplay and how it changes. I mean, like, I'd still go for those components, but and if it's like the idea, if it shifts to like the single seat fighter, right, and I'm out operating maybe off a Kraken, we're talking about years from now anyway, and I'm maintaining, a buck on a Kraken and stuff like that, and maybe I am doing my own maintenance on it. The idea would be for me is like, I'm gonna still like logistically want military grade A or components that provide me an edge in combat, and I just have to accept that part of the gameplay, and I would embrace it at that point. I know I don't want to do much of the engineering stuff, but I will accept that part of that is like, okay, I got to maintain, I gotta do maintenance, I gotta make sure I replace components at regular intervals or subcomponents at regular intervals, and that's a money sink for me. And I should prepare for that eventuality, and I should contract out with the Kraken pilots or whatever, or I would love it, a cargo hauler that I hired. Like, hey man, I'm on this Kraken out here in the black. I got permission. I need you to ferry some grade A stuff and some subcomponents out to me. Like,
I was going to bring that up too when you stopped talking.
Yeah.
Like, that sounded rude. That's not what I meant. When you
That's
were finished
okay.
with your statement about like carrying.
I talk
extras.
a lot.
Carrying
okay.
spares, right?
Yeah.
Is that going to be something? Are you going to have like 4 extra power drives or coolers or whatever, like whatever might go bad? I think it'd probably be wise to carry an extra hyperdrive or 2, or something.
Yep. Oh, somebody brought up a good point, by the way, in chat. And by the way, I know John Crew mentioned it recently about the whole, capital ship components and anything greater than size 2, and you ain't getting that out.
Even size 3?
Yeah.
Yeah, most size 3s will not. You won't be able to pull them out of the ship. You might be able to pull them out of their slot, but
that was the capital will require special facilities. Size 3 will require a station, just not a special facility, I guess. So the thing that happened, and this is one of those things that I dug up when I was doing the research for Pathfinders, is when they were showing off the components for the Vanguard when it was in production, is when John Crew made the statement that, size 0 will be able to be carried by hand, size 1 and 2, using a tractor beam. He's like, size 3, he was wishy-washy about size 3. And so people in the community have always just ran with, okay, we will be able to swap out size 3. And capital class will require a facility. And now they laid it out, concrete. Size 3, you will have to do it in a station. It's gonna, or put,
Is it only because the tractor beam can't pick it up?
No, it's so they got to ask point blank in that SEL, because the question was, hey, there are a lot of ships where size 3 components, you can't fit them out of a doorway, or whatever. Like, so it's not even just a matter of, the tractor beam. It's like, you can't replace it. Like, you couldn't take one and get it inside the ship. There's no doorway big enough for a size 3 to go back in. So in some cases, so it's a matter of like, you'd have to cut the hull. And I've said that for a while, because I mean, that's what we do with large enough components on the submarine. It's like, okay, well, that's not replaced through a hatch. Hatches are only so big. If it's big enough,
some things are built in, like before the final hull is applied.
You are correct. And they went with that. Like I didn't expect them to go with that. I expected them to be like, yeah, we'll figure out how to gamify that. And they're like, you know what? We built these things, and oh my god, it's gonna require you to literally pull into a station. And don't get me wrong, the gamify thing will be probably along the lines of, you're just limited to the vehicle loadout manager, whereas and maybe there's a timer associated with it.
Right.
Hey, it's gonna and that would gamify the whole. Hey, it takes sense time to do a hull cut and replace something like that.
Now it'll probably only be like 15 minutes or some shit like that, right? But still,
yeah.
But I was gonna call bullshit if they were calling tractor beam was the only issue, because they were showing off that one Gray Cat tractor beam or whatever it was, the bespoke tractor beam gun.
So that was
more that was holding back a fucking Aurora.
But that was remember that was just them, the ISC people just doing the we're playing around with ideas, but also that's not the only. They've talked about there will be larger, like even ground mounted tractor beams, like if the pistol is the -1 and the two-handed is the 0 or something, or even less that they still have to differentiate more sizes, but they did mention that there would be.
Wouldn't it be cool to have one like mounted on a Cyclone?
I was thinking, either mounted on a Cyclone or
the troop carrier one.
Yeah, you have your frontier maintenance facility, on some planet somewhere, and it's on a flipping tripod, and you're just and it's connected to a power supply that's sitting on the dang ground, and it's not going anywhere, but it has the power to move components, move crates, whatever. It's way more powerful. It's the equivalent of a ship one, but it's sitting on the ground, and you can use it like a dang 50 cal or something. I thought that would be really cool and easy for them to implement. They have a lot of, they got some splaining to do when it comes to tractor beams and the components and how they're going to facilitate the repair, because they have talked about in the past where capital class components are a part of the ship, and you can open up the thing and you can see them, but they have to be repaired. They don't get replaced. And so who knows how that'll end up working out, but that's a big factor, because say Night Cobb is playing with his Perseus that's sitting behind him. Well, Perseus has size 3 components, and I think it has a couple of size 2s somewhere in there, like maybe the computers or something. I forget what.
Is the Perseus only size 3?
Well, the Perseus has size 3s. It doesn't have any size 4s.
Okay.
So you have more options station-wise, and I think there are some things that are size 2, like maybe the computers and or coolers. I don't remember what the loadout is, but some of the Redeemer is a good, like you talked about, a good example, because some things are size 3 and some are size 2. So some things you can replace on your own, and other things you have to find a facility. And if you don't have a facility, well, crap, and who knows how that facility replacement will go and how long that'll take. So yeah.
Well, yeah, we were laughing when that one Around the Verse came out, and they were holding an Aurora back with the tractor gun. Like, that, wouldn't the guy go flying away? He wouldn't hold the Aurora. Like, I know that was game-isms and all that jazz and testing and shit, but
you can see it.
Wouldn't you just yeet away like Superman?
It's the ISC visual team fucking around. It's the same thing with like the exploding toilet and shit like that. Don't get me wrong, I'm enjoying those guys, but they're blurring their lines a little bit. You watch those shows and it's like, wait, what are you making fun, or is that what you guys are planning to do?
The little disclaimer in the bottom right corner is not big enough.
No, some people will expect it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, when the original tractor beams came out in Avocado, people were flying on boxes. Like,
your magic carpet ride.
That's a heavy ad break, by the way.
But still, that was 5 for me.
I've never like initiated them myself, so I've never seen them. So I apologize for the ad for the ads, guys. If you don't like ads and you want to give to a good cause, you can subscribe to my channel, and all the money will go to stackup.org. So click the.
Is that how that works? I don't have a sub button. I just see donate to charity.
If you subscribe to my channel, it will.
Oh, see, there is no sub button. It's donate to charity, and then you have to go over to support and subscribe.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you subscribe to my channel, all the monies go to stackup.org. That reminds me, I have to, my last Twitch payout, I have to donate that. So what I do is when I get a payout from Twitch, I click that link that's right there in chat right now, and I make a donation to my own drive. And then I post the receipt, from my payout as well as my donation, plus whatever money. I usually round it up to an even 100 or whatever the even 100 is. And then I post the screenshots in my Discord as well as on my Twitter, and then my YouTube community, the community tab, just so you guys know I'm not full of shit. So yeah, if you want to come and hang out and be a part of the conversation for this podcast or for Pathfinder's podcast, or when I finally get back to doing more regular gameplay streams, and you want to support a good cause, please consider subscribing. And I don't keep any of the money. I don't need it. I want it to go help other people. So let's go on to our so for my game plan, I'll keep it short, and then we'll get into the third question, and then we'll do a little bit of Q&A. So my dream gameplay really is, even though I bought the Galaxy, my dream gameplay is the Apollo. Just because for my sort of medevac purposes, me being a space flight medic doing SAR type stuff, it's really...
Yeah, you're the weirdo who wants to live out work and fantasy at the same time. I
think my job is in real life is pretty cool, and I enjoy it. I think it would be way cooler in a spaceship. But
I really thought the Apollo was coming with med gameplay.
Well, boy, so did I. Got me good. Got me fucking good, CIG.
Because I got me a med. By the way, it's Medevac. I think you can agree, Tree.
Yep.
They fucked it up.
Yeah. There is no such thing as Medevac. It's not one of my pilots, one of my first pilots who actually got me back into the military to do be a flight medic with the Army. But he was one of my civilian. I'm a civilian flight paramedic as well. This is what I do, civilian and military. But one of my civilian pilots, he's a retired medevac pilot.
Part of the crew.
Oh, thanks for the
medevac.
For the follow.
Part of the crew. Part of the ship. Part of the crew. Part of the ship. Part of the crew.
Part of the crew. Part of the ship. But so
See,
one of my civilian
Tree just scrammed out.
Yeah, I can't help it. But one of my civilian pilots, he's like, when someone brought up, why is it spelled that way? Why is it not Medevac? And it's because it's MED for medical, and then evacuation, not MEDI for medical, and then VAC for vacuum, because MEDI VAC is an actual medical device. It's a wound vacuum that we use for post-surgical patients. He's like, I'm a goddamn pilot, not a vacuum. So I'm a goddamn pilot. I fly a helicopter where it's not a vacuum. So that's why it's MEDEVAC. And so if you're, there are a few countries that spell it the wrong way, and we give them all sorts of hell in my line of work for doing so, because there's no rhyme or reason to it. They're just wrong. Hybrids of Dragon, thanks for dropping by. Good to see you. So my dream gameplay with my Apollo is really I want to go into those big fringe systems where there isn't infrastructure. We don't have a space station with a tier 2 medical bed, or a landing zone with a tier 1 every few AU. There aren't a whole bunch of people running around who are going to come to your rescue. Well, if somebody's in, somebody made a bad decision and their power plant blew up, and they need rescue on their ship because they've got bad radiation burns or something like that. The way I understand the sort of SAR gameplay is I'm going to have to, they'll put out their beacon, and, if I'm far enough away, I won't have an exact location for it. It's a beacon. I'll have to, I'll know they're in their just general area, and I'll have to travel to there and then scan and sort of, narrow it down until I finally find them. And so for me, I'm not so much worried about the combat aspect of it. I want to be able to accurately find that person. So I want a really I want a long range radar device. And so if that's a military grade radar that has the best range, and yeah, maybe I might burn it out by doing a whole bunch of scans, in a short period of time. So be it, because these people could be having a time sensitive thing. I need to get to them sooner. And so I need to be able to scan them quickly and narrow down their location faster. But then I also want that quantum drive that's going to allow me to do multiple jumps, because I'm going to scan and then jump and then scan and then jump and then scan and then jump. And I can't be sitting around waiting. I'm trying to narrow down that position quickly.
Not only that, but once you pick up the patient, right, you may need to get him back to a hospital and stuff like that.
Yeah. And so I want a quantum drive that's going to spin up quickly, but then hopefully, depending on how my configuration is, I might need to beat feet, or I might have the right capable bed in order to treat them in place, or at least sustain them. But that's the thing is for what I do in real life, and then also in game, the gamification of it is I'm trying to beat the clock in order to be successful at the job, in order to get paid. And so in order to beat that clock, I got to find them quickly and I got to get to them quickly. And I can't waste time, waiting for it to spool up. I can't waste time, waiting for a slow scan, or not, have the range to not even find them in the first place. And Walker 300, I'm not in a medical rescue org right now, just because the gameplay isn't really there. What we have right now just isn't satisfying to me, and I've gotten ambushed too many times. So I'm just really waiting to get into that gameplay. Right now I do bunker missions and retrieval ops. I go looking for relics and stuff, anything I can fly my dropship around to. But that's my but the gameplay I really want is flying my Apollo around in Pyro, and rescuing people who ended up on the wrong side of the size 3 laser repeater, what have you. So last question, and let's, I think, Night Cobb, it's your turn. Given your experience surrounding real-life ship systems, would you do anything different when it comes to components and subcomponents, or is there anything else you'd like to see?
I think they've got a good base on it from what I've seen from that TDD. I think they've got it all in the right spots, in terms of like military performance, competition performance above all things. And I think it just really boils down to, dialing it in appropriately. Honestly, the thing I'm wondering about is, do they create the scarcity of certain components in some systems, and maybe they didn't take them out? Because I honestly expected with the whole tractor beam salvage, I thought military grade A and B would just be gone. With that, but they didn't. And I'm wondering, because the other thing on that TDD technical design document, is they put like grade A and grade B components of all the different classes. Those are the only ones with subcomponents, and if you were like C or below, you don't get subcomponents to like further alter performance. Mm-hmm. And I don't think they're going to stick with that. I would imagine it kind of sounds like they're going to do subcomponents on everything, even down to the E level components. And the only other aspect of that I hope they indulge in is like, okay, why have E and D? If you don't put D components as stock components on a given ship, and I've never seen E components as stock components on a given ship, why is that even a category? Is it the only thing I can assume is they're saving that for the days when we are in Pyro and you've taken damage and you come across some civilian outpost, out in the middle of nowhere, and it's like, I limped here, what do you got? And maybe they have E components and you have to live with it, and you have to maintain it, and it's more
I think Drake should come with E components.
That would be, don't be wrong, that would be useful too.
E is the frontier ones that somebody built in their garage.
Yeah. And don't be wrong, like,
it'll probably work.
I would like that.
The junkyard 350.
Yeah, you might have to do some modifications, but I feel like it might work in that Scorpius. I don't know.
He gonna get you there.
Yeah. Maybe some bubble gum with it and some duct tape might help. I don't know. Just peel some of that.
I'll go Southern accent immediately.
Yeah. Well. I mean, I do that when I'm on the sub and people ask me if I can make something work too. I might be able to make that happen. I don't know. We'll see. And, of course, then the captain gets real nervous. I don't know why you're using that voice, senior. Red voice, sir. Anyway, the thing that I would be curious about, and I apologize, my dog's trying to tell me he needs to go out, so I'll wrap this up, is there value in lower range components? If they're not going to do it that way, I would hope that they would look back and say, well, why do we even have D and E? Maybe military grade D is still high performing relative to its civilian counterpart, but maybe it does require less maintenance. Maybe it is the more efficient version of a military grade component, or maybe it's the more durable version of a military grade component in a given category. So maybe there's a meaningful choice there still in the lower ranks of components. And even looking back at industrial and stuff like that, maybe similar issues. That'd be what I'd be curious of, is like, can there be value? Maybe not as much, but can there be value in the lower ranks of components? I don't know. And I'm going to leave you with that while I let my dog out real quick.
Sure. Sergeant Tickles, same question. Given your experience with real-life aircraft systems, would you do anything different when it comes to components, subcomponents, or is there anything else you'd like to see?
Honestly, I hate to take the cop-out answer here, but I feel like we've discussed this question over the entire podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Like we've kind of covered how it compares to real life, or how it compares to, or gaminess versus real life, and how to make it fun, question mark. So I don't have like a long thought out awesome answer here. I feel like we've already kind of discussed it throughout the whole podcast. So
no, that's fair.
No, there's nothing I'd do differently other than what we've discussed tonight.
I think that like Night Cobb is, that's the only thing I worry about really, is overcomplicating it, having too many options.
Yeah.
Because like I think it's, having the ABCD is good. And then military, the 5 classifications, I think, competition isn't greatly defined, but it kind of makes sense since we do have racers. They do need to have sort of something that's really meant for racing, but
not long-term, super high performance.
Yeah.
Right. You replace it every other race.
Yeah.
I mean, hell, in like AAA dragsters, they rebuild the engine every fucking run.
Mm-hmm.
Every run, it gets torn down or rebuilt.
Yeah. And I think
in racing, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and I like that so if you think about it, like, what's that? There's a name for it, but where, you can only have, something can be, good, affordable, or, there's like that triangle of economics or whatever. And I like how,
like it can either be, fast and good, or
good,
fast
or
and
cheap. There you go.
Or cheap and good, right? But you can't have all three. And, if you want to go to the left end, it's going to fucking cost you a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to go on the right end, like, it's like, it's so-so, but it might get you there. But yeah, I'm with you.
And so like maybe the C is just a little bit onto that slant in one direction for industrial or military, the 2 things that it picks. The B is further along on that slant. So it has 2 modifiers for it, +5 of this and +5 to that. And, negative to this. And, you get to pick 2 out of 3. And then those modifiers get bigger, going from C to B and then B to A. And then the other thing is going, like what they're talking about, you have additional sub items where you can add either amplify those modifiers you already have, or add additional modifiers. You have more, like for Diablo or other RPGs, you have more of your rune slots. I think that system is good. I only worry about is if they overcomplicate it, they add too much variety, because too much variety, it just gets too dang confusing. Because the other thing is, we have the grades and classifications, but then we have different manufacturers. And if we have too many grades and classifications before we even get to the manufacturer, part of it, because the manufacturer, who built it, is also going to play a part in it as well. It makes it too much information. It's so hard to keep track of.
I'm pretty sure 9 out of 10 people who play this game are going to just go to a site like Urkel or whatever, see what the meta is, and go buy that shit and not think about it.
Yeah.
You're talking about the 5 to 10% of people who care about engineering and who care about like putting the thought behind, do I want this component or that component? What are my benefits? Weighing the options. Most of the people are just going to go look at a meta, play that build, if you will, and that'll be that. So,
yep.
So I think malfunctions are going to be the great equalizer of this game.
Yeah.
I actually love that they're doing it.
Malfunctions will take it from a niche to necessary, but how will malfunctions play into the meta? People will figure out what the meta is no matter what you do.
Oh, true.
And the rare occasions of people putting thought into it of, do I want this drive to spin up fast for what I'm doing? Do I want this drive to have longevity versus fuel cost? Do I want this? Like, I believe that's your rare case. That's your not everyday player. Most players are going to log in, see what the meta is currently, if it's a patch or whatever, play the meta, and call it a day.
I like that what we have creates a, there's a meta for a ton of different things and use case scenarios. Like, it isn't a one size fits all meta. It's this is the meta for this use case. But in a game with this many things that you can be doing and different modifiers, based off of the size of the system, the amount of infrastructure, whether you're hauling, doing combat, there's a meta, but there's 100 different metas or 1,000 different metas, because that meta will change depending on what you're doing and where you're doing it, and so I think that's the part that, it may take a bit more effort to find that meta for what you're doing.
I think there's going to be, this sounds super weird and anti-meta, but I think there's going to be multiple metas. There's going to be a general mining meta. There's going to be a general, combat meta. There's going to be a general meta per ship. There's going to be a niche meta. Like, if you're mining in X system, this is the meta. If you're Gladius in Stanton, it's going to be a different meta than a Gladius in Pyro. So I think this is the weird game where you're going to have niche metas. And that's kind of weird to wrap your head around as a gamer, because generally meta is like the best, right? That's all there is to it.
Yeah.
In this game, I think there's going to be niche metas, and you're going to have to go find them and find a site that's reliable and find players that are reliable.
An engineer that knows.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, that's why I wanted to build that. Like, because I don't want to spend time on Urkel, like, weighing the costs and options of my Scorpius and Pyro versus my Scorpius in Stanton. That's a bad example, because I'm going to have to do that myself. But I mean, unless I pay somebody to maintain my ship, which I'm not opposed to.
That could be a gameplay. You could play this game with never stepping foot in a ship.
Yeah.
That's the weird thing about this game, I think, long term. Not short term, but definitely long term.
Hell, maybe my gunner is also my part-time mechanic. I don't know. But that would be the idea, right? Like, I don't want to have to think about that. I'll pay somebody to do it. I'll happily engage in a money sink, because I don't feel like there are enough money sinks, and anything like that creates one, or an opportunity where somebody else, even like another player, gets my money, and I'm freaking down.
Part of the crew, steady, man. Part of the crew.
Well, the thing is, a good engineer, I think the whole wrapping up of this podcast, if you will, a good engineer is going to be worth your time and money.
Yeah.
It's going to be finding someone who knows their shit, and it's going to be worth your time and money. So,
yep,
that's really what it boils down to.
Yep. The crazy thing is there's not only going to be a meta for performance, but there's also, like, there's a meta for if you're just a cheapskate.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah, still do a meta for efficiency.
That's crazy to me. I keep on coming back to Diablo 4 because I know you've been streaming it, and I played it a bit while I was away at school, and I've played all the Diablos.
Supposed to be in school, man. What are you doing playing video games while you're in school?
Oh, dude, it was when you have to go to the school and because to keep doing the job that you've already been doing for a while. It's like, all right, Army, if you want to,
I'm just giving you shit.
If you want to do this,
right there,
yeah. Oh man, yeah. I'll tell you about it another time. But yeah, it was a really good use of taxpayer dollars. So let me tell you what. But yeah, it's if you're used to Sgt Tickles, like you were talking about, we're not used to this as gamers, where you have a lot of different metas, and different metas for different use case situations, and it's kind of like there is in certain games, like if you're going up against you're doing a specific raid or a event or a boss or something like that, and there's a meta for that boss versus other aspects of the game. It's kind of like that, but that's the weird part to me is there's in Diablo or RPGs where you're really finding these metas for gear, because that's essentially what this is. It's a gear meta, but it's a gear meta and you have a lot more classes, I guess you'd say. But the weird part to me is there's a gear meta for just being a cheapskate. I want the most bargain stuff because I'm trying to save money because I'm more focused on putting my money into other things. Your gameplay is being a penny pincher in order to amass wealth, and so that's the interesting thing to me is like it's not just
Scrooge is out there. We've got a game for you.
That's what I'm saying, man. I feel like there's going to be a lot of metas. Are you in Pyro? Are you in Stanton? Are you in XYZ system?
Yeah.
Distance versus time. Distance versus money, right? Like how much does it cost you to traverse this distance? Okay. And we're just talking about hauling. How about mining? How about combat? How about do you have an Idris? Do you have a Perseus? Do you have there are so many things and variables that it's going to be just figuring out metas is going to be a full-time job. It's fun to think about, because we're really just mindsetting this with one or two systems, and we don't even have the second system. But we're really we're coming from a mindset of one system.
Yeah,
maybe a second.
Well, it's this game is like a big puzzle, and we've gradually gotten pieces of the puzzle, some bigger than others, and to start forming the picture of what this game eventually will be. Somebody asked, I'll give an example. Somebody asked about what do you think maintenance will be like? What's the game of that? And have you guys done mining?
Yes.
With mining gadgets? Have you used any of the mining gadgets?
Just briefly in was it?
Right about one stream
in PTU in 318. I do want to go do more mining. I just haven't had a chance because I do have a mole.
All right. Well, so if you've used one of the mining gadgets, like actually gone and put it on the rock, right? You had to dial in to get like a 96, 97, try and get close to 100%. To get the bonuses out of the rock that you want, and for the gadget to be effective, right? I honestly, that's what I see like maintenance. I would actually not be surprised, and I would encourage them if I had to pick something to say, hey, why don't you just do that for the maintenance? Because the first time I used one of those, and I'll admit it was recently, within like the last 6 months, I was like, this is more engaging than I thought it would be for the mining gadget, and I've had to play around with it a little bit. And once I figured it out, it went a little bit faster, but it was one of those things like I could stand that for, maintenance. And not only that, but maybe it rewarded me with oh, did I get the 98% solution? I spent a little bit more time on this component. Maybe it's a longer time until the next malfunction or the next time I've got to do maintenance. Or maybe I get a slight performance boost out of it. That's, in my mind, what maintenance would probably be for given components. You just regularly go back there, you dial them in, and you say, okay, I got a 96% solution. I could try and get more, but that'll do for now. Or maybe your engineer is the guy that's searching out that 100%, and he's like, these are well-maintained components. I don't know, something along those lines. I think it would be really easy, actually, even just to port that over. From the mining gadgets, you've already got the UI interface made. You just need to change maybe some of the words on it. So I don't know, CIG, if you ever happen to watch this and you haven't figured out how you're going to do maintenance on the components, that seems like you've already got a system in place that you could port over relatively easy and not have to do a bunch of new work, which the more you guys find systems like that, the better off you'll be.
Exactly. I've been saying that about medical gameplay is like mining and the mining
calibrations.
UI. That's
Thanks.
what I do. Yeah, I calibrate people with medicine.
Yeah,
that's literally all that it is. I push this button to make this thing go into them faster in order to adjust this number on the screen, and that's what it is. And so, in order to hit this narrow green bar that I'm aiming for in my head, that's what mining is, and that's really what medicine is in real life. But yeah, that's a good segue into this question, and it's actually the third question, but we'll come back to the other ones. So the other thing with maintenance is, I like the idea with the calibrations, and I think if you're doing maintenance on a component, I think it should be shut down. So I'm on your Carrack and I have 2 coolers or whatever it is. And all right, I'm going to turn this cooler off and the other cooler is going to take the load for a bit. And that, maybe I need to put the ship into a little bit lower demand mode in order to, make it so this cooler can continue to cool everything that I'm using. And then I shut it down and I do the calibration on it and it's back up and, you get that efficiency. The other thing that I think, I
disagree, by the way.
You disagree or you agree?
No, I disagree. Only because my real life, it's like, when I do calibrations, I do it while the equipment's up. And I do regular maintenance. I do regular maintenance to preventative maintenance. Most preventative maintenance I do while the equipment is up and running. Don't get me wrong, there's some pieces of preventative maintenance that require the equipment to be shut down, but for the most part, you build it so that, and you design the equipment so that, like, when I'm out and underway for months at a time, I don't have to shut down. I don't have to limit my warfighting capability in order to maintain equipment. There are exceptions. Full disclosure, there are exceptions, but for the vast majority of it, the design intent is I should be able to do the most of the preventative maintenance on it, like while it's up and running. Now, caveat that if I'm going to do a repair, I totally agree with you there. If it's a repair, like a malfunction damaged a piece of equipment, and now you're doing corrective maintenance, yeah, you're shutting it down probably. And then you're going to have to make a decision about how you shift your loading around, how you shift, your equipment, redundancy, and all that kind of stuff. That I totally agree with. Like, if it's got to be corrective, it's a repair, shut it down, I think is the minimum. If it's just, hey, and I like that better, honestly, though, for the engineer, like while you're just out in flight, right? That's something for them to do in Quantum, where it's like, now you've got engaging gameplay in Quantum where it's like, you can keep stuff up. You just have to go back and it's like, hey, now's a good time to do preventative maintenance. We're on a long Quantum ride. Now we go back and we do the little mining gadget UI thing where we dial in performance on the Quantum drive, on the shield generator, stuff like that. Or if you're in a single seat light fighter, right? And you're out in the black and you're just waiting on distress calls, because that's your gameplay. Maybe you're in between, you hop out into EVA, you go back there. You don't want the fighter to be shut down because you want to be able to get back in the fight, but maybe it's a good time to go back and make sure your coolers are calibrated, your shield generators are calibrated, and then it's like, okay, back in the fight. But I like the idea that if it's like, oh no, that took damage, it's corrective in nature, I have to repair it now, then shut it down. I'm with you there. That'd be my one disagreement there.
Because that's the other part of it is the UI portion, but also the physicalized portion. Like, you could probably do the UI portion, at any engineering console, but
and that makes
in order
sense
to but you don't have to go to the component to do the console work. I think that's silly. But if you
have the console, but if you have only I guess you could do it from within your ship on an MFD if it's like a single seat fighter.
Yeah. The
Sure. Okay. Yeah.
But but like components not only have subcomponents, but they are supposed to have physical, items that you have to replace in order for maintenance. Like,
As long as it's more than just clicking the fuse button,
yeah,
like they showed in that one video.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm with you
Gotta
there.
be more than that.
Yeah, I think that because that's part of the the redundancy, but also this takes damage and it burns out this fuse, or you only have to replace this particular subcomponent. Maybe there's 5 pieces or 3 to 5 pieces to the actual device, and okay, well the whole thing isn't broken, but if I replace this one piece, then it'll start working again.
It's gotta have some sort of modularity because of the larger components.
Yeah.
You got to think size 3 and above, right?
Yep. No, you're right.
This is something I've been trying to circle back to, and I'm sure that there's probably an equivalent in what you do, Night Cobb. But for Sgt Tickles and I, we have line replaceable components on the aircraft, and there are things that you can replace out in the you walk up to the component, and I can pull this out and then put a new one on.
Absolutely.
But if you want to take out the whole power plant, the whole engine, the whole this whole thing, it has to go to a facility.
Absolutely. It's the same way.
Yep.
Big. That goes back to my hull cut discussion, right? Like there are components that it's like I can fix something on that component, and I can do that out in the field. I can do that underway. But if it's the component itself, it's like, okay, that's a hull cut. I got to be in dry dock for that. Like we can't even be waterborne anymore. So
yeah, that's the fun part of it is, and especially for the survivability aspects. In order to get a hard kill on a component, you either have to really neglect it or it has to take serious damage. But it can be a temporarily, it's just like a hard kill on your player. It's not you're not designed. The game, obviously it doesn't work that way right now. But the intent is for you to not be able to die easily. Get downed, but be able to be revived. Your component, and thus your ship should be able to be downed, but revived, given that you have the right supplies. And that brings it back to the logistics. If you don't have that line replaceable part that's needed for this power plant to function, sweet, you have 1 power plant instead of 2, until you can get that piece again. But if you do have it, all right, well, it just means you go to that locker that's down the hallway and you grab it and you run back and you put it in and you're back up and running, and you've only been, down that 1 power plant for a couple minutes, but you planned ahead and you had those line replaceable units. And I really like that gameplay for the multi-crew ships, the larger components, as long as they just don't make it overly complex. So if a size 3 power plant has 20 pieces to it, I'm going to be upset. But if there's 5 things and I just have to make sure I have to keep, a small supply of those 5, then I think that's good to go.
Well, and you have to, I think I missed the question or whatever, but just coming back into the gameplay. Wow.
We were talking about what do you think maintenance will entail?
Yeah. Well, I'm just adding on to the conversation. You also have to assume that every space station is going to have all the parts you need.
Yeah.
Maybe it's
not. So you got to plan logistically.
Maybe you're at a space station that might only have shit that's going to limp you on to where you need to be to repair your shit. Assuming that we're in a higher tier ship, like a Perseus or whatever. Now, don't get me wrong. I've got a Perseus. I cannot fucking wait for it. And I hope they don't gimp it like they did with the damn Ares.
It's gorgeous.
Yeah. Don't get me started on that. But anyways, assume you have a large ship, right? A size 3 or above, and you're pulling into a station. That station might not have all the components and stuff that you need. It might have some stuff to get you there, and that might be where your size E and D stuff comes in handy, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe you got to replace it with a size E or a size D just to get you back to some place that you can get your good components back. Yeah. Not every station is going to have every replacement part, I would imagine.
The description on the progress tracker for the Pyro space stations, and they're talking about like the rest stop version of the space stations that are still in Pyro and sort of semi-functioning, and each one is controlled by a different gang. But it says adding small rundown rest stop stations to the Pyro system, which provide basic services. So if you think that they're going to have your military grade A components to replace
100%.
the ones, or even the particular subcomponents that are sub items within that to keep it running or repairing, you're gonna be disappointed. And
right. I cannot just slap a Ford alternator on my GMC, right? That's not how it works.
I mean, you could.
I gotta have
but
or a part replacement alternative that's equivalent, because the bolts won't line up. Like it's how it is. It's not like that it can't do the same job. It's the bolts won't fucking line up.
Yeah.
So you gotta find a place that has stuff for your systems.
You just gotta have the right attitude. Okay, you're not motivated enough.
Sorry, I didn't machine a bracket that will fit it to it.
So we've got 2 more questions in the Q&A, and I'm not going to take any more questions because we've already taken 2 hours and 45 minutes of these guys' times. And I just want to say thanks so much for joining me this evening, because this has been a lot of fun, and I really appreciate you guys. So the first question, and it says, thinking about Night Cobb's case specifically, is there any indication there will be waste products that we will have to do, or that we'll have to deal with from, say, fuel usage? Do you think that's going to be a thing?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I guess that was in relation to like the expenditure of nuclear fuel. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't want them. One, not to kill the illusion and the aesthetic of nuclear power for everybody, but especially naval nuclear reactors actually burn real clean. Like it's not so much one of those things like where you have to we generate nuclear waste that we then have to like deal with underway. That's not really a thing. You burn out the fuel, and fuel becomes fission products. I don't want to get into the whole nuclear physics discussion, but
push up the glasses.
Yeah, actually, but it's again even more so though, right? They picked actually the right element for their ships. They picked hydrogen. And hydrogen burns real clean. Like it's once it's burned out, it's gone, and it doesn't leave any byproducts.
Yep.
It's a singular atom for all intents and purposes, or at least almost the atomic mass of just one singular atom or one neutron. So it's ideal in that regard. Highly volatile, but it burns real clean. So I don't think I want waste gameplay.
I mean,
I don't think many people do.
We're all military here. To piggyback on what Night Cobb said, yeah. No, exactly. It's very clean. First of all, they've actually made hydrogen-powered cars in real life, and they're ridiculously efficient. Do you know what they expel? Water for the most part. Yeah. However, you get into an accident, and well, it's not good. So as a fuel source, it's fucking fantastic. It really is. It is one of the best fuel sources. As a matter of fact, it is a fuel source for space agencies. Yeah, it is. Yeah, they combine hydrogen and oxygen to make explosions. So
make rocket go boom very fast.
We actively already use hydrogen as a fuel source on Earth. But
the reason they use it is because it's so readily available.
Yes, it is very readily available and very volatile. Like you said, if something goes wrong, something goes very wrong.
Yeah, catastrophically.
Yes. So
there's a joke in there, and I'm just going to leave it alone. So I don't think we need to have fuel waste. The only thing I could think of is like from way back, they talked about how power plants would actually, there's fusion reactors and antimatter. They were going to have different types of reactors for the power plants. And that was the only thing I could think of, is that maybe, over time and depending on how much, strain you put on your power plant, you might have to replace the fuel rods. And that's like a sub item, to gamify it as, that's unique to the power plant. But I don't really like waste. I don't think we need to call it waste.
If they get down to replacing fuel lines, I quit.
Yeah.
I'm done.
I'll take that back though. You know where that would be good? Talk about waste products, and it actually kind of already exists. And where they could refine it and make it more meaningful gameplay is for those guys that want to do refinery gameplay, because they consistently referred to the refinery gameplay as using reactors to refine material and stuff like that. So, and you already have a waste byproduct from when you refine materials, and there's just nothing really to do with it. But that would be interesting if that was like part of an economical thing where it was like, hey, you can, or even a cargo hauling thing. Maybe it's just you have to take, refinery reactor waste, and haul it off to some out of the way system, kind of like our Yucca Mountain and stuff like that, where you're just taking like spent cores and hiding it out in the desert and shielded away from everybody else. That would be neat. And then you have like special like radioactivity like considerations for shielding for your cargo and all that kind of stuff. And maybe they're very viable contracts, and that would be neat to take like waste. Anyway, I'm theory crafting, but you brought up a point there.
We're busting down the whole reality versus game versus fun.
I'm not saying that would be cool though, but that's emergent gameplay. I like it.
I do like the idea that, okay, we're going to have a handful, like 3 or 4 sub items for each component that you can replace in order to keep it running. And if they are different per component, like the sub items for a cooler are different than the sub items for a power plant. Okay, that makes sense. Or maybe they share 1 or 2 things, and then the other 3 things are unique to how that would work. So you have to keep a variety of things on your ship. And whatever CIG wants to make it, that's fine, especially because we don't have a huge variety of components. It's really your power plants and shields, coolers, computers. It's not a overly long list, and as long as the majority of the things are shared items from size to size, I think you're good to go. I just I don't think we need to have special put on your radiation suit gameplay to swap out the spent fuel rods in your reactor.
You're getting nitty gritty at that point.
Yeah,
I don't think
that's unnecessary to me.
That goes well past the whole realistic fun barrier.
Yeah. Fat Docs 8. So there's the hydrogen or whatever your ionized fuel is for the thrusters. There's that, but then the power plant also consumes a fuel, and so that's the thrusters themselves actually consume fuel, but then the power plant also consumes fuel. Is the way it's sort of designed,
and it's the same fuel.
Yeah,
same hydrogen.
Yep. But we don't know how, because they have talked about being able to use different gases to make different fuels, and how that's going to work. That's a whole different can of worms. So the next question, this is the last one because we already talked about the third one, and then we'll call it a night. Sorry, Aether Drift. We're not going to do any more questions just because we're running kind of long, and as much as we'd love to hang out and talk, I have to start my new job in the morning, and it's late for these guys. So, but really appreciate you taking the time to put in the question. The last question is, what ship will be the best introduction to engineering, the hardest engineering? We'll just leave it at that. What ship's going to be the best introduction to engineering, and which ship do you think is going to be the hardest when it comes to engineering?
You want to take it first, Tickles? I got my ideas.
Intro, I would say, would probably be the Connie. It's just big enough to need an engineer, I think.
Mm-hmm.
All the subsystems are right in the back in a convenient room. There's multiple seats, which means there's an engineering seat or 2 available. I would say the Connie is probably the best for introduction. Hardest is going to be whatever the biggest ship is. Bengal is not player capable, so probably the Javelin. Because you're going to need a friggin' engineering crew alone just to man that ship. So I would say easiest Connie, hardest Javelin.
I think the Connie definitely is a good intro to that because you do have, it'll be interesting to see how when they do the gold standard if they move around where the components are because there's components in like 2 or 3 different places already in that ship and it's not that big. But yeah, I think that the Connie is a good example of a ship that you could benefit from having an engineer, but it's certain, an engineer doing like the 3 roles they talked about, but it's certainly not required, and it's certainly one of those, if you're, a lot of the work could be done by your co-pilot as well.
That's what I'm saying. It's like right into that area, getting into quote largeness where you're going to benefit by having an engineer, but I don't know that it's 1000% necessary. You know what I mean? Like, so that's just my thoughts on that.
Nightcop, what about you? What do you think is going to be the best ship for an introduction to engineering? You're starting off your career as an engineer. You got your first job. You're the Kaylee of the Star Citizen universe.
I agree. I think it's gonna be. Well, I mean, I'll just put it in a category. I mean, like Connie's a great one. Like Emma Star, Corsair, similar size ships, similar layouts, similar principles. In terms of that size factor, I think I'll disagree. I do respect the choice of the Javelin too, because I think long term, you're totally right. That requires a crew. But I think the hard mode single engineer is the Hammerhead for right now. Like, and I say that because it's right at the cusp of like, I don't think you use a crew of engineers for the Hammerhead, but I think that's going to tax one person. That's them in hard mode, not having to maintain a Connie MSR. That's when they're like, okay, this is just me, and what's my limit without help? I think the Hammerhead's going to be their hard mode.
I was thinking hardest overall. Hard mode, yeah, for sure. I would say Hammerhead, probably Polaris, Perseus.
Ooh.
Like,
yeah,
up there. Probably 1, maybe 2, but if you got one good motherfucker, like he could run shit.
Yeah. The Hammerhead is an interesting one because we know where the engineering console is, but in order to get to that engineering console or to go from that console to where the components are, I foresee that engineer in combat getting a lot of cardio in. Because if you spent time inside the Hammerhead, you know that there's component storage in like the arms going to the turrets as well as down the halls, and then you also have your main power plant things, in the cargo bay. So there's a lot of different places that you need to be, and if there's multiple things going on or not going wrong at once, that guy is just going to be huffing it up and down those hallways like crazy, trying to replace this and put out a fire. And you're not going to need more than one engineer. The overwhelming majority of the time, to do the maintenance and keep the ship running well, you're fine with one person. But God forbid,
keep in mind, somebody brought it up in chat. Keep in mind, right? You said cardio. Remember what I told you about what my thoughts are when you go to combat, what the condition of your ship's probably going to be when they bring in these 2 systems that are the first to come, and life support and gravity. Like, it's going to be Expanse style, guys. When fire is in the game, like when you go into combat, you're going to turn off your life support and you're going to turn off gravity because they're going to be the 2 most immediate sacrificial systems for anybody not in a seat.
Yep.
And your engineer is going to be floating around.
Well, and here's where
just keep swimming.
Yeah.
I think this comes in. This could be on the Perseus, the Hammerhead. Think any combat style with multiple seats. maybe you have a gunner with engineer experience as well, and you put them in the least viable seat, right? So maybe the rear seat on the Hammerhead,
yeah.
But they're a gunner / engineer that knows your ship, knows the components, right? While the main engineer might be fucking off all the way at the front doing something, you call for the rear gunner / engineer to go do other stuff. You have a second sleeper engineer, if you will.
Or co-pilot could share engineering duties.
Yeah.
And then none of that, but then maybe he's got access to the engineering role. I know the theory crafting and stuff like that, but that makes sense to me too, strategically.
So maybe you hire a main and a gunner that also engineers, right?
Yeah.
So,
what a marketable dual skill set too. That's awesome.
Yeah. I think that's going to be one of the most complicating factors is not necessarily because the gameplay is the gameplay. You need to know your ship and know the components and know how to use the engineering console. But if the actual physical actions of maintaining your ship and the layout of the ship is what complicates the job, I think, because Commander Wade beat me to it. We don't know what the Starfarer rework is going to look like. But even with the rework, I don't see the Starfarer getting reworked to be so efficient in terms of space that being the engineer on that ship is an easy job, because you're going to have components in a lot of different places going down the halls. Going back towards the turrets and everything. It's got multiple decks. It's not going to be no matter what they do, it's not going to be an easy ship to navigate. And even though you'll have your engineering console probably near the main engineering section where the power plant is and stuff, to do the maintenance and do on the fly repairs, you'll be taxed.
Not only that, like on the Hammerhead, it's upstairs. So you got to go up an elevator.
Part of the crew. Part of the ship. Part of the crew.
Now there's an engineer.
Part of the crew.
Downstairs.
Part of the crew.
But the main station is upstairs.
Yeah.
Which is where you would imagine your engineer is going to stay.
Yeah.
I do think that the Hercs.
Go ahead. Sorry.
With basically everything being seemingly on one level, that probably helps. But yeah, you bring up a good point. You're like, oh, okay, well, now you're waiting on the elevator and the elevator music, and shit's on fire. Do. And yeah, that's a good
put
point.
Elevators on submarines, guys. They just did a lot of this elevator gameplay, and it's like, maybe you do that on ships. It's interesting choices.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but
so
it's like the last thing I'd want to worry about.
Stairs and ladders.
Honestly, I feel like we're theory crafting 10 fucking levels above where CIG is actually going to end up at. Like we're up here thinking about top tier bullshit. We're probably going to end up around here, honestly.
For the initial implementations, I think it's going to be, I think they're going to try and ease us in. They're not going to just throw us in the deep end, and they're certainly not going to have everything all locked down at once, but there's a lot of stuff that they've talked about that they've, shown design, they have design docs and things for, and so we're theory crafting around that sort of stuff. But there's, I always try to, rein us in so we're not just going off the rails of things that are not within the realm of possibility or haven't already been discussed. But like the Hammerhead, that's their first big example. That's like the one that they're building this on, and we have it, and you can run around, okay, this is where that component's going to go. Oh, well, the engineering station's
said this a long time. We're like, this game will never be out. You know what I mean? Like, it'll never just be like Star Citizen's done. This is a game that's going to evolve over many, 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 many years. It's never just going to be, oh, hey, SC's in final release. Here's 100 systems. Here's all the gameplay done. It's going to be one system, 2 systems. Let's say 5, right? As a great, wonderful hope. 10, 20. Like it is going to come out in phases. I think you're going to see Star Citizen released at like 10 systems, 5 maybe. This is a game that's going to come out, completely change over time. Engineering will be much more advanced in 15 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is a long burn game. We're not going to come out with the systems that we're talking about, I don't think. In 10 years, maybe, but not right away. We're going to come out with version 1 or 2. It's going to be very basic. It's going to be changing a fuse. You know,
Yeah.
it's we're not talking about 5 subcomponents per system per ship. Like initially, the engineer is going to be changing a fuse.
Well,
maybe later down the line.
It's hard because they haven't defined what the initial release of resource management and engineering gameplay is going to look like. You know, I put those resources in the resource doc, and it is, hey, this is how the resource management system is going to work. And then we have, you know, they're working on the gameplay design for engineering gameplay. And so we know, you know, but we don't know, okay, well, what's the resource system going to look like for this ship or that ship? You know, we've seen the prototype for the Hammerhead, and that's it. They haven't shown us a prototype for the Hull A, but we know that's being worked on. We know that they're working on the resource management system for a bunch of other ships, you know, and so, but we have no idea where they are on the development on those systems for those ships, you know, or adding in components for those other ships. We just know that they're working on it. So, you know, we just had to speculate with what we've got, and hopefully we're going to get more information on this. I would, if we don't see more about resource management at CitizenCon, I'll be super surprised. You know, just because, you know, it's something that they're working so extensively on. It's a huge priority for them. But we just need to, when we get closer is when we'll get more concrete information about what the scope of the initial release looks like. You know, and
like I said, man, honestly, it's going to look different in 10 years.
Yeah.
This is a long burn, not a quick burn.
Yeah, the V3 or 4 or tier 3 or 4 is going to be very different than the tier 1 implementation. Same like with medical gameplay. We're at tier 0. You know, they haven't even talked about what tier 1 and 2 are going to look like. So yeah. But that's all the questions that we're going to go through tonight, because we are just over 3 hours. It's a long podcast, but this is actually good because it'll make me easier for me to break it up into sort of even segments. We still have like 40 people hanging out in chat. Had that awesome raid from Soul Citizens. So thank you very much who's still hanging out with us and being a part of the conversation. A lot of really good comments in chat, and I've been watching it, trying to keep up with it. So we appreciate the interaction and the conversation and the feedback. Sgt Tickles, Night Cobb, thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate you guys taking the time out of your evening, your weekend to come in and hang out and talk about this stuff with me. It's been a lot of fun, a lot of really good points, and it's especially interesting to hear your individual points of view from Sgt Tickles wants to be a hauler, wants to drive his whole E, and Night Cobb has no interest in engineering and just wants to pew pew. It's just kind of interesting and entertaining. So we will definitely, obviously we're going to have these guys back again for more episodes in the future. I would love to do Armchair Admirals and Generals more often. It's just a nature of the beast, but we definitely have more ideas lined up for future episodes, but would also love to maybe get like a joint stream together so we could, go do something in game rather than just talk about it.
Oh yeah.
But we'll figure that out. But since we still have so many people in chat, I would love it if someone could throw out some suggestions for a raid. I'm bad about that. I always forget to raid people, so I'm trying to be better about it to spread the love around.
Part of the crew, part of the ship. Part of the crew, part of the ship. Part of the crew, part of the ship. Part of the crew, part of the ship.
I don't have anyone on my friends list currently streaming.
You got
Viridi. Yeah, I know Viridi from Twitter, and let's see.
Yeah.
Is it spelled the same on Twitch? Yep. let's raid Virity. Send her for some love.
Yeah. Thanks for watching, y'all.
Yeah, thanks for watching. Thanks for hanging out, everybody. If you don't already subscribe on YouTube, please consider subscribing to me on YouTube. Help me get over that 1K mark, so that way I can get monetized for ads and give that money to charity. I'll drop the link in chat, but go send Virity some love. Give these guys follows and likes and subscribes on their content as well. The links will be in the YouTube if you're watching this later in the show description. Sgt Tickles is growing on Kick, right? Yeah. Kick.
Trying.
Yep. Yeah. So thanks so much, everybody. And is the raid ready? Oh, I forgot to click start. My bad. I'm sorry. Noob.
That's okay. That's okay. And Walker, I will happily be an escort for Sgt Tickles, by the way. And I'll also protect his holler with like a combat ship.
Escort.
I'll do both.
And if you enjoy conversations like this and want to talk more, please consider joining my Discord. The link is on my Twitch. It's in the little about thing. So come hang out, come talk with us, and we'll talk more about this in the future. Thanks again, guys. Have a good night. Let's go raid Virity.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.